All right. Hey, Facebook Live. Welcome to another wonderful morning or evening if you're in Delhi, where Gauri is right now. Welcome. And we have another killer morning of great interviews for you on Be the Talk. We want to help you get accepted. We want to help you, once you're accepted, be able to spread the impact of your talk. It is 8:30 on the nose. I have three people who have actually showed up early to be interviewed, which is great. I applaud all of you because we have 10 interviews today in the next 3 hours. So this is going to be rocking and rolling. And first come, first serve. I am looking forward to this. We have Gauri Angrish, and we are going to jump on in 3, 2. We are live with Gauri Angrish. Gauri, are you ready to talk?
I'm ready, Nathan. Thank you.
Gauri Angrish is the founder and CEO of Keough, a med tech venture in New Delhi, India. She received 2 patents. She's a certified NASDAQ milestone maker and a Forbes Asia Top 30 Under 30 honoree for healthcare and science in 2018. Gauri Angrish, welcome to the talk.
Thank you so much for having me, Nathan.
Well, your talk is called What If You Fly? And it comes from that quote, what if you fall? But then on the other hand, what if you fly? And you spoke in an event where the theme was the butterfly effect. And it sounded like you were a really big fan of Ashton Kutcher. So please, Gauri, take us behind the talk.
So I think the Ashton Kutcher part can be ignored. But other than that, so when I got the invite to speak at a TEDx event, it was definitely one of my bucket list. But to be honest, the first thought, as I have with a lot of things which are out of my comfort zone, is that I don't want to do it because I have this underlying thing which I feel a lot of us have. And so I decided to make my talk about that because I feel any one of us who is trying to achieve something out of the ordinary or out of our comfort zone always has an underlying thought which tells them that what, you might fail or you might fall. And it's always those people who make the effort of taking that one step forward and thinking, what if I fly and give it a shot. That's what I think helps you push the boundaries. I've always tried to do that. Public speaking is something which I have been nervous about for years. I've been happy that I'm a tech CEO, so I'm always in the background. But this year, thanks to the TED Talk, I decided to put myself out there. I think it was a great experience for me, and hopefully, I was able to inspire at least a few more minds to be able to do the same.
Yeah, I'm sure you absolutely did. So, yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit more about your company as well. I mean, what kind of services do you do, and how did you start that, and how does that really relate to the talk?
Sure. So Keough is a medtech venture, as you said. The big
Mhm.
problem we're solving is that of medicine non-adherence. So what I mean is that people who take medication on a daily basis, they end up not adhering or not taking their medication exactly as prescribed. So I was actually in working in McKinsey in the pharmaceutical and medical device vertical, and that's where I realized that medicine non-adherence is a huge problem. What was exciting for me to understand was that it's not just a problem for patients, but it actually impacts each and every stakeholder in the healthcare industry. Pharmaceutical manufacturers end up losing a lot of potential revenue. Providers, again, lose a lot of revenue and retention. Doctors have absolutely no clarity with respect to if the patients are taking the medication, all of that. So I decided that I needed to come up with a solution which was comprehensive. And to be honest, it has a lot to do with my talk because, like I said, I've always been sort of a nerd. I love being in the background. I had no business experience. I'm a biotechnologist by education. And suddenly I decided to do this venture. So, my first step of quitting a very comfortable corporate job and putting myself out there was again taking a step which it was completely out of my comfort zone. Secondly, setting up a tech venture when I am not a technologist at all, like I understand nothing about hardware and software. I happen to be great at writing logic, but that's about it. So I think all of these things was linked to a dream that I wanted to do, and always had this underlying thing that I may not be able to do it, but it's just that waking up every day and making sure that you push yourself forward. Today, Keough's, I'm very proud to say that I have two co-founders. We're a team of 15 people, which are a bunch of tech people, and we're already working. We launched this Jan in 2018, and we're already working with not just two of the biggest private healthcare companies in India, but we've partnered with WHO, Clinton Health, and USAID to manage tuberculosis patients through public health with the government of India. So it's just great to see that we've reached here, and it's all with respect to pushing yourself forward.
Well, you're a 30 under 30 honoree for this year, and you started the business this year. Is this from this care dose, or is this from a prior venture, or this is your first time out of the chute?
No, it is from Keough's, and we launched this year. But to be honest, we started our development in 2016.
Okay.
And therefore, I've been involved in the healthcare industry, and there's been a little buzz about us. So I think that's where the Forbes people sort of picked me up from.
Wow. Well, I mean, what a tremendous honor. What amazing competition is there in the space. And I know this, Talk Universe, that I come from a very healthcare oriented family. So this non-adherence, people forgetting to take their pills or not being able to, is a huge issue. And yes, it affects the entire chain. You want to talk about systems? This system jacks the whole thing up when we're not taking the meds that we should. So, man, that sounds great. And I think there are going to be a couple of people in my immediate family that will be of interest to your company. So we're going to be back in just a moment with Gauri Angrish. We're going to pivot over to you, Talk Universe, and we are going to be in just a moment over in the Blitz Round. And we're back with the Blitz Round. We are here with Gauri Angrish. I'm going to ask her a series of either-or questions related to the preparation and performance of her recent talk. Gauri, are you ready?
Sure. Ready to go.
Now, you already answered the first one. You were invited to speak, correct?
Yes.
Now, being invited to speak, you've got this busy, startup company. You've got everything else. How did you carve out the time? How did you? I mean, was it a temptation to prioritize other things as important as this talk is, just because you were invited to speak, or was that not as much a problem for you?
To be completely honest, coincidentally, it fell on the first day of the holiday I was taking after like 2 years, so it was very easy to push the holiday one day back. I think all entrepreneurs are used to that.
Well, great. So, so it cost you a day of of vacation. Okay. Well, in terms of your preparation, Gauri, are you a memorizer, an improviser, or a blender?
I really try to be a memorizer. I freeze on stage, and therefore I'm an improviser.
Okay. And what's a tip, tool, or technique that helped you?
So this comes from personal experience. A tip that really helps is that I get extremely nervous when I'm going up on stage. So one thing I've learned is when I go there, I literally take a deep breath and, just sort of forget that I have to follow a script. At the end of the day, you know what you need to talk about. So if you forget that, you can just flow into it.
Absolutely. So were you an opener? Were you a closer, or were you in between?
I was in between.
In between. Any advice for the other in-betweeners?
I think it's important to make your talk not super serious. I think the best was that I linked up a little bit of humor and a little bit of my own life experiences, which were pretty humorous. That helps because, that keeps people engaged.
This is the cut for time question, Gauri. What was the most painful part of your talk that you had to cut out?
I think a lot of experiences that we've gone through in Keough's, any entrepreneur would agree that it's like being a part of a movie. And the same day, you have the worst moment and the best moment. So I had to cut off some of the candid moments because you didn't want to make it too lengthy. And just, how involved my co-founders have been in my story. I think I couldn't talk more about that. They've been extremely impactful.
Here's the my favorite question to ask. What was the most unexpected, strange, or just plain weird thing that happened during or right before you spoke?
It was during, and anyone who sees the talk can easily point it out. I just randomly froze for a minute. I did not speak. So for me, it was really funny because I think I was having an internal dialogue with myself. So it took me like a minute to just like snap out of it. But that was really strange because I could see the audience just staring at me that is this a part of the talk or not? I think that was strange, but it was an experience. I think I'm becoming better or trying to.
Oh, you absolutely are. And, all of us that have been up on that stage, we can all relate to that. How did you get out of it? How did you realize from the reaction that, oh my gosh, I'm getting in my head too much, and then you re-engaged, or was it something else? Or
To be very honest, I had a couple of friends in the audience who just gave me the look of death. So I think it was that which like snapped me out of it. But yeah, it was just a moment of like, I think I got too into it. I started like getting nervous. So I needed to just snap out and start with absolutely everything, not look at the script, not think about anything. And I think that's what helped.
That's interesting because I think most people, they feel the pressure when they first walk on stage and they lean into that anxiety, and then things get more and more comfortable from there. But I've interviewed some other people, fewer people, but it is familiar to me that sometimes the pressure kind of creeps up on you when you're on there, and it can be really easy not to be present anymore and let that kind of gang up on you. So
I mean, if I can just add one thing, I think it's also about the time, I think I just looked at the clock and I realized that I have like 4 minutes more or something like that. And I think that just got to me that, oh, I have a lot to say, but little time.
Yeah, well, we've been enjoying this Blitz Round with Gauri Angrish. Her talk is called "What If You Fly," and if you want to find out more about that, you can go to our Be the Talk webpage at bethetalk.com. In the show notes, we'll have a link to her talk. We'll also have a link to Gauri's LinkedIn profile, and you can find out about Keough, and you can find out about all of her awards and other things that she is involved in from connecting with her on LinkedIn. And we're going to be back with Gauri Angrish in just a moment for the final word of advice. And we're back. It's time for the final word of advice with Gauri Angrish. What is it?
I think my final word of advice is that the biggest project we all have is ourselves. And I really think that evolution is the only step forward. Everyone has their own trajectory. So there's nothing else we need to follow except what we need to do for ourselves. The best part starts outside the comfort zone. And so it's okay to be outside that. And even if there's a voice telling you that if you fail or if you fall, it's fine even if you do, because sometimes you fly and that changes your world.
Gauri Angrish, thank you so much for coming on the talk today and sharing your wisdom with Talk Universe.
Thank you so much, Nathan. It was lovely speaking to you.
All right, that's a wrap.
Great. I hope I was okay.
You were great. You're great. We're going to bring Elena up here from the green room. Elena, how are you? Elena, can you hear me? I think she may be frozen. We're going to escort her back to the green room. That's very, very interesting. See, Josh. We're going to bring Josh up here. And what happened to Gauri? Went back to the green room. I'm not done with you, Gauri. So you are going to give Josh some advice with putting up with me, because you are our newest talk alumni. You are our newest talk alum. Just a word of advice for Josh, and then we're going to jump back on live here.
I think it was super easy. I was a little nervous. I thought I'm going to mess up, but I think it was super easy and very comfortable. So I think no advice, just go with the flow.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, you're not going to mess up. No way. All right. So Josh, and maybe I should call you Levent, because I'm going to do a little bit of a spoiler. If you haven't noticed, I like to do the spoiler of the talk, because people can actually watch your talk, and that's the whole point, to drive eyes to your talk. Where are we? Right here, Josh. Yeah. So we become who we choose to be. And that's kind of the central focus of your talk. Change who do you want to be is the talk. Josh Levent is a business designer who helps smart companies create the future, entrepreneur, advisor, mentor, coach. He is a high-level designer working on concepts, organizations, and other systems to deliver real human value in a sustainable way. JoshLevent.com. That's all the bio background stuff. Any changes to that? That's what you sent me.
Yeah, no, that's great.
All right. Very good. Gauri, thanks so much for your advice and talking Josh down and everybody else down here we have in the future. And we're going to escort her to the green room. My apologies, everybody. I know I have a really fuzzy picture right now, and it's kind of embarrassing because every one of my guests is crystal clear. And I'm the one with the fuzzy camera. I don't really understand what is going on right there, but we're going to jump right back in. Let's see here, Josh. If you can give me a 5 count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Very good. And we are live in 3, 2. We are live with Josh Levent. Josh, are you ready to talk?
I am, Nathan.
Josh Levent is a business designer who helps smart companies create the future. Entrepreneur, advisor, mentor, and coach, Josh is a high-level designer working on concepts, organizations, and other systems to deliver real human value in a sustainable way. Josh Levent, welcome to the talk.
Thanks, Nathan. Good to be here.
Your talk is called Change. Who do you want to be? And really the central focus of your talk is this idea that we can all reinvent ourselves to the point where you've really walked the walk. You've changed your name. Josh Levent is not really your real name. It's like your second or third incarnation of your name, maybe more than that. So please, Josh, take us behind the talk.
Yeah. Well, the talk, as you said, the concept is really who are we and how do the stories that we tell ourselves define who we are? And the idea for the talk really came from, I was doing some sort of self-coaching exercises where I went through and listed all of the life experiences I had so far. And I realized there was a lot of experiences that I kind of had forgotten about that were important and impactful for my life. And I thought, why don't I think about these things? Why don't they come up in my day-to-day thinking about who I am? And I realized that if we don't make that conscious, what we remember, then we're just kind of like our identity is just kind of up to chance. And I didn't want that to be the case. So I thought to myself, who do I want to be? And what experiences have I gone through that show me as being that person? Because I think, this is something I don't talk about in the talk, but we often have contradictory also memories. So if I want to think about a time when I gave a great talk, I can think of that. And if I want to think about a time where I totally bombed on stage, I can think about that too. So if I think about the times I bombed, I'm going to think of myself as a terrible speaker. And if I think about the times where I really killed, then I'm going to think of myself as a great speaker. So that's really important, actually. What do we remember? And of course, it really has a lot to do also with mental health. So people who are depressed tend to remember just really negative experiences. And it's this kind of negative cycle.
Yeah, well, I mean, Josh, I can relate to that because Talk Universe knows I come from the performance art background. So I'd be given a piano recital as a kid. And just because of some of my background, very well-meaning background, but I thought that if I visualized, how screwed up is this? If I visualized myself absolutely slaying it on the stage, slaying the Beethoven, the Bach, note perfect, emotional, proper interpretation, that was somehow prideful. So I would kind of do the reverse, and that's not good. Don't do the reverse. Only visualize good things. So I really, it kind of hits home a little bit what you're talking about, Josh. And the other thing, response that I kind of have, that Jung quote about, if we don't make the unconscious conscious, then it's going to rule our life, and we're going to call it fate. And it doesn't have to be fate.
Yeah, I like that approach. Yeah.
So how dramatic did things have to get? I know there were some cross-cultural things. You were in China, and then you were in different countries, and in an effort to kind of blend in a good way with the culture, you decided to take on a Chinese name. Then you took other names, and so tell us a little bit about the metamorphosis of your name, Josh.
Yeah, well, it's sort of I immigrated with my family to New Zealand when I was 9 years old. So I grew up in Germany before that, and coming to New Zealand as this kind of little 9-year-old child with not a huge amount of self-esteem, I think, and I kind of was made fun of for being different and for being a foreigner and having an accent, and that's kind of negatively impacted me, and I think kind of gave me kind of negative associations with my name as well. So it made me really question kind of also the fact that my name was Turkish and I didn't feel Turkish because I was born in Germany and then grew up in New Zealand. So I thought, why do I have a Turkish name? What's that about? And so I think it was really, as I said in the talk, in China, where was really opened up for me because, and this is true for a lot of Chinese people that come to New Zealand, they pick up English names, and when foreigners go to China, often they take Chinese names. And so I did that. And when I came back, I thought, okay, now this is really strange. I have a Chinese name, I have a Turkish name, I don't have a German name, and I don't have a Kiwi name. And these are the cultures I actually identify with. So I just, as a joke, actually, at first it was really just a joke, I got a New Zealand name. And then it kind of grew on me. And I think the point where it got really serious was when I put it on a job application, because I had read some research that showed that it was done in the UK, English names got much higher rates of callbacks than foreign names. And so I thought, okay, I don't want to deceive people, but I'm going to put Josh before my real name. So I put Josh Al Okyai being my real surname on my job application, my CV. And I did notice actually getting a lot of callbacks like I'd never gotten before. And I thought, okay, this works. And that sort of started the point where I was using Josh as my kind of fake, or like a nickname, and then using the rest of my name as after that. And over time, it just sort of came out that because Levent was what people had called me previously, my real first name, Josh was now my new one. So I just put those two together, and that became my new name. Actually, it was at first kind of like this idea of self-branding. In 2012, I started freelancing a little bit, and I thought, okay, I'm going to buy the domain joshlevent.com and use that as my like personal brand to find clients, and then that kind of stuck as my name. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, Josh, I gotta say, when you first watch your talk and you make that announcement, this isn't my real name, I changed my name. It almost for people like me that are kind of privileged to, or maybe not privileged to be in one country, one culture, our entire life, we kind of can't relate to that. And as on the surface, and it almost strikes us as, oh, is this some kind of flippant experiment in artistic expression or something? But then the more I hear what you're talking about and really go into, you're up to 4, 5, 6 cultures. Really, you don't have the luxury to be all super individualistic if you're going to be mobile and make a difference and add value into the culture that you are. And I'm just interested in your thoughts on not just multiculturalism, but how to really pivot, how to be fluid, how to be flexible, and yet there's a core of you that you're true to. I mean, and that core of you is that you're going to change to fit and add value and serve whatever culture you're in. So what can someone like you teach all the people like me that have only lived in one country, maybe one state or province or one region or city our whole life?
Yeah, that's something I struggle with, because the reverse is also true, right? Like I can't imagine not having moved, and so I don't know, but I do think it's really important that, I mean, we're being told this all the time. The world is moving at a more and more rapid pace, and things are changing faster and faster. So we need to become more dynamic. We need to become more flexible. And so I have this unfair advantage because I lived in 3 countries before I was 10, and that's a huge privilege actually that I have to be able to have that experience. And I don't know, I guess like something I found very valuable is traveling. So I think I encourage people who live in and have lived in one country their whole life to do some extensive traveling, to do like long periods abroad, months at a time, going backpacking across Asia or whatever you can do to get this kind of really different experience. And then, of course, there's so many things we can do within our own cities where we can push ourselves outside of our comfort zones, whether that's meeting people from different cultures or something completely unrelated, like going on a stage and giving a talk, or something else that scares us at first. And those experiences that we have outside of our comfort zone, I think, actually help us to see the world in new lights. Yeah.
Well, absolutely. So we've been talking to Josh Levent, a very flexible individual. I took the Strength Finder Talk Universe, 34 strengths. Guess which one was 34? Flexibility. So I can learn a lot from somebody like Josh. Flexibility is actually a huge value. It's not a native skill to me. So I am listening up. I hope you're leaning in too. His talk is called Change. Who do you want to be? And we're going to pivot right now. We're going to be flexible. We're going to pivot right over to the Blitz Round. And we're back with Josh Levent. It is time for the Blitz Round. I'm going to ask Josh a series of either-or questions related to the preparation and performance of his talk. Josh, are you ready?
I am.
All right. First question. Were you invited to speak or did you apply?
I got myself invited.
You got yourself invited. So you initiated, you flexibly took initiative and initiated something, it sounds like, and then they responded. And man, what a great way to get on stage. Am I right?
Absolutely, yeah.
How did you reach out? Because that's a really valuable strategy for a lot of people.
So this was actually my second TEDx talk, and the first one. So I've been a fan of TED actually for a long time, and since 2006 when they first put them online, I was just a huge fan. I started telling people in 2006, one day I want to be up on that stage. And sure enough, 7 years later, a friend of mine was organizing a conference, a TEDx conference in London, and said, "Would you like to come and speak?" And I said, "Of course." And that talk wasn't like as much as I hoped for, but at the same time, it showed me it's possible. So as soon as I walked off, I thought, okay, I'm going to do this again. And I started looking for opportunities. And then I think I eventually figured out what the topic was first. And then I posted on Facebook and I said, I have this topic. I'm looking for a TEDx venue to speak at. And just started tagging people I thought might have connections. And one of my friends got in touch and said, I know somebody organizing a talk in Germany, a conference in Germany. Here's the contact details, get in touch with them. They're looking for speakers. And I kind of got in touch and they talked to me a little bit about the talk. And then they said, okay, please come. And they kind of invited me. And I think that was really interesting because I know there's a lot of events where they have open applications, but actually I think most TEDx conferences don't have open applications. So you can still get in, you can still apply, but informally, and you have to just kind of get in touch with people and put yourself out there.
Yeah, Talk Universe, that was a huge strategy because Josh is absolutely right. There are, I think at this point, there's a minority of open in terms of all the events, all the organizations, as well as all of the, I get more and more like you, internet ads that kind of cheapen the whole process. So I think that the organizers as a whole are wisely kind of circling the wagons a little bit. So if you'll do what Josh did, trying to get my finger, it's a reverse camera here, but if you'll do what Josh did and just, even blasting it out on Facebook, an intelligent thesis, and say, hey, I'm looking for somebody that knows somebody who can get me up on my next stage because I have another idea we're spreading, and here's my last one, and I respect the format and everything else. What a great thing. So even if you haven't given a talk yet, going on social, that's one of the habits that we talk about in the Get Accepted course is building your base. What a better way to do it than using your base to help you get on stage for your next event. Josh, in addition to that, what's the tip, tool, or technique that helped you?
One thing I did, which I love and I keep doing now, I didn't do it for my first one, it was a huge mistake, was practicing with a camera. And I think I did that talk, the change, 30 times in front of a camera before I gave it on stage. So that helped a lot. So you get so much better after you practice 30 times in front of a camera because that adds stakes, I think.
Absolutely. So, are you a memorizer, improviser, or blender?
Improviser, definitely. For the first one, I tried to memorize it, blacked out on stage, lost a bunch of lines, and just had huge panic beforehand and afterwards. So. Then afterwards, I was like, okay, I'm not doing that again. I'm improvising. And so my practice, it's interesting because how do you practice 30 times when you're improvising? Well, I have a bullet point list of the talk, and then I just keep doing it over and over again, improvising each time. And there's certain sentences that begin to stick, but the whole thing stays fluid and stays really flexible. And that really works for me.
Excellent. So what was the most painful part for you to cut out of this one?
I think it was like the more in-depth story about my name. So I could spend an hour talking about that. And in the early drafts, I was spending a lot more time, and I just realized it's not really adding value to the talk. So I just made that shorter and shorter and shorter.
Well, and there's a huge lesson there, Talk Universe, because our personal stories are really personal and we really value them and they're close to our heart because it's our stories. And kudos to Josh for realizing how much the audience might be able to handle and how much is just kind of filler or sentimental and personal, and probably has a big advantage because he's flexible and he's already used to being really, really culturally sensitive. What are your thoughts about that? Because I mean, I have that sense also, and a lot of people that I coach, don't always have that sense, and it is there. So what are your thoughts about acknowledging that it's there? There's a separation between what's near and dear to you and what the audience cares about or what they're not going to care about anymore, and how to trim that off and know where the line is.
That's, I think, a really hard question.
That's why I asked it. Yeah. It's really hard.
There's this idea of the curse of knowledge. We can't imagine not knowing something that we know, and that makes it really hard. And to be honest, my advice, my instinctive advice, is get feedback from other people. But actually, when I think about it, I didn't really follow that advice very strongly myself. I practiced that and created that talk a lot, pretty much in isolation. And so, yeah, I think when you do get feedback, you start to notice what works and what doesn't. People will tell you, but you don't have to do that, as long as you can be critical with yourself. But you have to, and I think that maybe that's the other thing about repeating the talk. Like when I practice it 10 different ways, and then I will think really critically about, if I didn't know anything about this topic, which version would I want? And then I always realize it's the shorter one. and I love that there's a Seth Godin quote in this. He says, nobody ever leaves a talk thinking, damn, I wish that was longer.
Absolutely true. Now, we've been enjoying the Blitz Round with Josh Levent. You can go to our show notes page at bethetalk.com to see his talk. We'll have a link right there. It is called Change. Who do you want to be? There are all kinds of great lessons in multiculturalism, in adapting your story while also being true to yourself. You got to go and check it out. We will also have a link to Josh's website, joshlevent.com. Levent is spelled Levent.com, joshlevent.com. And we'll be back in just a moment with Josh Levent and the final word of advice. And we're back. It's time for the final word of advice from Josh Levent.
I just have really three quick tips, which are, one, speak your fears. That's something that we haven't discussed yet, but when I get on stage, and I did that also in this talk, as soon as I got on stage, I said, I'm nervous. And for me, that really helps. If I speak out what I'm afraid of, immediately my fear level starts to go down. So that's tip number one. Tip number two is do it in a 3-act structure. There has to be a payoff, a resolution, and some conflict in your talk. That's really important. And then the third one is speak, practice, and you'll get better.
All right, Josh Levent, thank you for coming on the talk today and sharing your wisdom with Talk Universe.
Thank you. And I realized I forgot to mention this earlier. I have a podcast coming out about stories, about our personal stories. And that's really closely related to my talk. Stories are so important. And I spent the last 2 months kind of traveling the world and interviewing young people about their life stories. And
we'll put it in the show notes page. So send me an email. We'll put that in the show notes page. And send people over there. Congratulations, Josh. Thank you so much today.
Awesome. Thank you, Nathan.
All right. Excellent. Elena is back. Stuart is here. We're going to say hi to everybody here. Elena, can you hear me? And can I hear you? Because you're up next. Elena. And then I can't hear her. As soon as she comes online, it freezes. So we're going to move Elena back to the green room. I don't know what's going on. Mark, how are you? Or Stuart, how are you? Mark, we lost Mark.
I'm great. Thank you, Nathan. Can you hear me?
I sure can. Now, I can't do a whole lot of chat reading when I'm doing this because of the cognitive load, but it looks like there's a little bit of debate going on about the sound quality and all of that. So can you hear me okay?
Perfectly. Thank you.
Excellent. Gauri, how are we doing in terms of sound and everything? I just want to make sure everything's okay. Yeah. So sometimes I wonder, is it the platform? Is it the plugin to Facebook? I don't know, but I'm glad that you can hear me, and we're gonna move everybody else back to the green room here. Actually, I like to interview on the left, so I'm going to walk back to the green room, and then we're going to put Stuart on the on the right. I'll get on the left, and all right, here we are. Stuart is on the left. You don't know what I'm talking about, but the split screen piece going on right there. All right. Let's do a 5 count, Stuart. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
All right, excellent. And all right, Stuart, the future of your personal data. Stuart Lacey is a thought leader, TEDx speaker, investor, and entrepreneur. As founder and CEO of Trunomi. Okay. As founder and CEO of Trunomi, he believes that individuals own their data and should have a trusted and transparent way to control who uses it, for what reason, and how long. And then Trunomi.com. Yeah, good deal. Any questions for me, Stuart?
No, none at all. I'm just really glad to be here. Thank you for having us.
Hey, I'm so glad that you are flexible, like Josh, and patient, because I know the way, it's like any of the rest of the more time we allot for things, these interviews would take like my entire week. And because you're so awesome, I can get these done, in a lot more focused amount of time and at a higher level. It's actually amazing how the more you dilute the time, my energy dilutes too. So I'm in, I've got a fire under my seat right now. So we're gonna jump on it. I'm gonna adjust my little webcam so I'm not towering over you, my friend. And we are live in 3, 2. We are live with Stuart Lacey. Stuart, are you ready to talk?
I am indeed. Thank you.
Stuart Lacey is a thought leader, TEDx speaker, investor, and entrepreneur. And as founder and CEO of Trunomi, he believes that individuals own their own data and should have a trusted and transparent way to control who uses it, for what reason, and for how long. Mark helps mission-driven organizations and leaders clarify their purpose to better inspire and lead their people. And I am bleeding my eyes down the Excel spreadsheet at this point. So Lester, please go back and delete that last line from the audio. Stuart, thank you for understanding that. I just went just seamlessly went from one spreadsheet row to the next. I need my glasses. Oh my gosh. Stuart, your talk is called The Future of Your Personal Data. Welcome to the talk.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here, Nathan.
The future of your personal data. You come out on stage, you say there are 3 things going on. Are people being robbed? Are they missing out? Or are they being paid for their data? And you end the talk and you basically say, if everybody had a purpose, the world would be a better place. You really cover all the bases in that talk. Please take us behind the talk.
Oh, thank you for that. And I must say, it's a very personal experience for me. I'm a repeat startup founder. Usually they've always been ideas that were of some commercial value, but this was something that just came as a complete mission value basis. And 6 years ago, I was actually at my dining room table with my niece. And if you recall those days, she's 15 at the time. She's taking pictures, posting them on Slack and Snapchat and Facebook. And she's saying, don't worry, Uncle Stuart, although they're pictures of your kids, Snapchat deletes everything. And, I looked at her and I said, there's no way that a commercial system and company like Snapchat is going to do that. You really should know who's using your data. And obviously, we found out later on that Snapchat wasn't deleting them. And now more recently, people like Facebook have been caught up in it. And so it was quite amazing 6 years ago when I had this idea that you actually own your data. It's probably the largest asset class on the planet. And if you're comfortable with things like iTunes or anything where you get use and rights and permissions, and it completely regenerated the whole music industry from, physical delivery to digital, rights-based, easy. And then you could basically access what you want. And so we took the first opportunity basically in history to build out a platform to do that. And then as the world has kind of normalized towards it, 3 years ago, I did my TED talk. People still thought I was nuts, but they loved it. And it's amazing. Now we have 50,000 views on it, but I get comments all the time saying it needs 100 times that, because even just 3 days ago, Tim Berners-Lee, who founded the internet, the World Wide Web, just came out and said, you know what? I think in 2019, everyone's going to own their own data, and they need a rights system in order to be able to manage it. And so it's nice to be validated, but we were definitely very, very early.
What an endorsement. I mean, not necessarily specifically of Trunomi yet, but just the entire validation of your business concept and where we're at. And that's amazing to me that 3 years ago, people were kind of looking at you funny still, because this really isn't a new issue. It has been really from maybe not from the very beginning, but it's been around for a while, ever since social started, and we're volunteering all kinds of personal, intimate details of our life under the guise of thinking that these platforms are trying to help us connect with one another. I mean, that's amazing to me. But congratulations on the amazing Tim Berners-Lee quote, the founder of the internet, not Al Gore, but the founder of the internet. That's that out of context joke. Had to throw that in there. What does that do for someone like you? I mean, you've founded multiple companies, but what happens when the inventor of an entire technology basically validates the concept that you've been putting your heart and soul in for a while?
Well, you know, we always thought that early on it would be a combination of regulations, technology, and consumer awareness coming together and colliding. And lots of regulations. You might have heard of the General Data Protection Regulation. You've probably heard about it all over California, Brazil. Almost 18 of the 20 G20 countries now have similar legislation. So big data privacy drivers. Then you've got technology, as you mentioned, companies that have built entire empires off of your data. The Facebooks, the Googles, the Apples, etc., who literally have offered free stuff to you, Gmail or whatever it might be, in return for what you thought was a free ride, but it wasn't. Your data was actually how you were paying for it. And then what's happened on top of that has been systemic failures, people getting hacked and breached, centralized systems, Experian being a good example. And everyone throws their hands up. And in front of the Senate Ways and Means Committee, they say, what were you thinking with your customers' data? And the CEO goes, well, it's our data. And they go, no, it's your customers' data. But can you imagine actually in a Senate committee hearing getting it that wrong? And then you've got Cambridge Analytica and Facebook. And so we see these big step-ups continually where the public is getting more and more upset, more and more worried. And then suddenly people that have a pretty big brand, Tim being one, can now back a horse like this, and then they can explode value. Fortunately, we're 6 years into our build, our development, we're robust. And so we're now in a very attractive position to actually be able to significantly help. And so it's a really exciting time.
Well, congratulations, Stuart. And I'm going to back up because a couple of references there. I want to unpack this for Talk Universe. So
sure.
Cambridge Analytica, that was the whole thing about the Trump election and the fake Facebook ads that we have all kinds of riots and protests and all kinds of drama over here stateside. So that was the most recent. And then before that, Experian, you should know, and a lot of people don't know this. I was a loan officer for a few years. So I know about this because I'm pulling credit reports for people that want to buy a home, and Experian is one of the 3 credit reports. And this is a CEO of a credit report company, probably the premier one, who gives such a bonehead answer as, oh, it's our data, it belongs to us. No, it's not. These are all the loans that all of us take out. These are all the loans that we're repaying. This is our personal financial data. And we're not even getting into personal medical data or any of that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
And that's a huge, I mean, I've interviewed other people that talk about, as important as our financial data and our personal social media data is, the black market for medical data is like 10 or 20 times the value, or maybe 5 times the value of these other things, because it's so intimate and private and life-threatening and everything else. So your thoughts on that?
Well, definitely, you own your healthcare data. It's quite obvious, right? But there's things like you own your identity. If you think about the fact that it used to be you had to go to a country to say you are Nathan, but you've got refugees, you've got people that live off the grid, you've got people in countries that don't have access to the financial system. And Trunomi, as a company that deeply believes in the ethos and the values, actually looks at this as self-sovereignty. And actually the United Nations has followed track with ID 2020, which says that your identity is now a sovereign right, a fundamental human right. And so if you think about, you own your identity, you own your location history, you own your credit, you shouldn't go to Experian. You should be able to express your own credit and not have to go to a company that says, oh, every time you ask, we're going to impugn your credit because someone else has asked. And we're going to charge you for that. Oh, and by the way, we just got breached and lost all your data. And so we weren't a very good guardian for that. Oh, by the way, please pay us again. And if you don't like Experian, you can go to 3 other companies. All 3 of them actually just use Experian. So the system is fundamentally broken. And what we represented and now fundamentally deliver is a whole new way where you've got consumer centricity and complete trust. And that's why the company's called Trunomi, because it's based on trust about knowing me, knowing you. So we're just a very straightforward new way to deliver value. Yeah.
Okay. Well, and so I'm wondering if maybe not the technology behind what you're doing, but the almost the idea is almost similar, parallel to like blockchain and Bitcoin, because you're empowering little guys like me and Josh and Gauri and all of our other guests here to actually have a place to store our own things and a mechanism to maybe eventually directly communicate with these other entities, so that we don't have to go through these unfaithful middlemen organizations.
That's correct. And those are big moves towards decentralization and distribution. I wrote an article in Forbes about the 7 Ds of the future, and that was a very big one. And I won't go into the whole blockchain environment, but we know a lot about it. But we do use smart math or cryptography and smart contracts as part of what we do, because it's safe, it's completely secure, but we don't go all the way to some of the more eclectic sides of the protocol. So we deliver something that is very easy to use and enjoyable for someone also to have a touch point with.
So just give me final question before we pivot here, but what's this going to look like when you have a build, or is it going to be like kind of almost like a virtual credit report, or is it going to be way more fluid than that? Or?
So right now we are live in production with Fortune 500 companies. We're overwhelmed with lots of inbound companies that want to talk to us about opt-in marketing, data privacy, access rights, permissions, all of that. But where it's going is right now we solve business to business. We sell to large enterprise and companies, and they can all find us at our website. But the next big move is you actually being able to use Trunomi as a direct customer. And so that will be moving from business to business to B2C. And we actually don't call it B2C because it's actually the flip of that. It's me owning my data going out, and that's actually called me to B. So that'll be the new big term coming out. Me to business. Me owning my data going outbound.
Yeah, so Stuart is invented his own classification. I love that. So me to B,
correct,
instead of B2B or B2C or any of that stuff. I love big ideas, and I love it even more when the time has come, and when someone like Tim Berners-Lee says, "Hey, it's time to own our data. It's time to do something in here." How are you coming along with being able to meet him, or have you met him already?
I've had the good fortune of meeting him before. People have disagreements as to what technologies might solve the problem. And Tim is a web guy, so he's very focused on the way the World Wide Web works. I do think there's other technologies that might be more elegant and more powerful to solve. But I think that's the great part about technology is we might both be right, we might both be wrong. But there's a lot of very smart people working on this. And the more people that are behind it, the higher likelihood it'll come to market in a meaningful way that really works for people. So this is a technology startup. So you have to be flexible, you have to adjust, you have to grow.
Well, we've been enjoying this talk with Stuart Lacey. He's the CEO and founder of Trunomi. His talk is called The Future of Your Personal Data, and we'll be right back with the Blitz Round. And we're back with Stuart Lacey. It is time for the Blitz Round. I'm going to ask Stuart a series of either-or questions related to the preparation and performance of his recent TEDx talk. Stuart, are you ready?
I am indeed.
All right. Were you invited to speak, or did you apply?
Neither. I pursued it aggressively.
Okay.
I had such a big idea, and it was bursting out of me. The world didn't know about it. And so I said, what is the greatest, best platform for thought leadership? Where is the highest likelihood that people that matter, that have a voice, will be able to hear? And how can I deliver it in such a way that anyone from a child to a grandparent, non-industry, would understand the view? So I set it as a goal, and I achieved my goal.
All right. Well, and that's exactly what we're doing, trying to get people accepted. What's your advice for people in terms of how you got accepted? You aggressively went after it, but you had to apply, or you met the right people, or what channel do you use?
I am a natural networker, so I think meeting the right people will always make a very big difference in your life. Part of what your skill is, Nathan. But equally, I think one of the most important things is you'll see in my talk, the company I work for never comes up. There's zero commerciality. Mm-hmm. It's not built to be a commercial. There's no sell in it. I don't even talk about product. All we do is we talk about the large problem state. The classic Steve Jobs-esque kind of, story arc, the hero, the villain, how it gets solved, the big win at the end. And I think focusing on that and really ensuring that you're sharing something that's never been shared before publicly, if there's such a way to do that, are the fantastic ingredients that I think make a great TED Talk.
Well, and I love this Talk Universe. Take note, because Chris Anderson in his book TED Talks, he talks about this. You want to lead with curiosity. This is not a commercial, and TED audiences. Right. Even if they weren't sophisticated going in, even if they had never gone to a TED Talk before and paid money to sit in the audience, after the 5th speaker, after the 10th speaker, after the 20th speaker, some of these events have 30 or 40 people in it. They're pretty wise to the sales pitch or whatever you're trying to slide in there. So I love that Stuart, as a real market leader, as a real, true thought leader, goes in there like a boss, goes in there, gets people piqued with their curiosity. And, as a result, I can't stop asking him about his company and what he's doing and all that. This is a better format for that stuff, because he got me intrigued to lean in and ask him the question and be a little bit of a megaphone for the amazing stuff. Really kind of a human right crusader vehicle that he's building now to help us take control back of our data. And I must say, that's not ironic at all, that somebody who bypasses Experian and credit reports and all this stuff, not really bypasses, the traditional route of applying and finding all that. That's a great way to do it. That's what a lot of us have to do. That's how I had to do it, get rejected by, 10, 12, 15 places and then get accepted. But Stuart aggressively goes in it. He carves his own path, and that's a great way to do it. As well. We all have a network. So huge. We're going to, we took a little bit of a pause out of the Blitz round because this is extra juicy stuff. What was the most painful part that you had to cut out, Stuart?
Well, it's funny you ask that, but I actually did a couple of cameo interviews with some really well-known people, asking them what they thought about what I was saying. And 3 for 3, these people were going, no way. There's no way it's ever going to work. I can never see a future. And I really wanted to put those in. And then I thought, well, I didn't have the time. And secondly, I didn't really ever want to have to do a told you so. I had that much belief in what I was doing. So I thought, I try and govern by EQ as well, the emotional quotient. And so I decided not to put up targets to shoot them down. I rather just went with being very authentic, very open, and very true to my message.
Sure. So now let me unpack that. So you had proposed an idea. They really didn't like the idea. You respected them by going mostly with what they wanted and not, bucking the system or trying to wrestle them in their own.
Yeah,
event.
I think it's really important to be an enabler. Like this word disruption is so overused. People don't want to be disrupted. Large companies, industries. Actually what you want to do is find a collaborative way to support, enable, and empower. And that's what we do. And so I think it's a much more collaborative approach, and everyone comes out a winner.
Well, I think that's huge. Talk Universe. I mean, this is not the place to be a traditional artist who is high strung and all those other little stereotype things. Actually, the successful artists aren't that way. That's some kind of weird construct, romanticized construct of imbalance that I think society creates. But I love. I mean, what a boss move. Stuart, you respect the people. I mean, what you're a business owner. You put on events. You know how much goes into that, how many different stakeholders there are. So the last thing that you want to do, even if they make suggestions, you don't quite agree with it or whatnot, if it's something that you can compromise on in a good way and serve and still help everybody get their goals, absolutely do it. And if there's something that you needed to say that you weren't really able to say without, rocking the boat, find another event. There's no limit on what we can do. We don't have some kind of a quota of TED Talks that we can all give.
Yeah.
There's another step for that.
Do the right thing, do it with passion, do it authentically, and the rest will take care of itself. Like, don't put commercial needs ahead of anything. Just be open and be forthright about it.
Well, we've been enjoying this conversation of the future of your personal data with Stuart Lacey. He's the CEO of Trunomi.com. Trunomi is spelled TRUNOMI.com. We're going to have a link to his website in our show notes page at BeTheTalk.com. And we'll also have a link to his talk, The Future of Your Personal Data. And we're going to pivot right back to Stuart Lacey in just a moment for the Blitz Round. And we're back with Stuart Lacey. It is time for the Blitz Round. Actually, let me say that again, because I'm starting to hit that. What are we, interview number 3 or 4? And I'm starting to lose. I need like a chip implant here. We've been enjoying this Blitz Round with Stuart Lacey, and we're going to be right back with the final word of advice. And we're back with the final word of advice with Stuart Lacey. What is it?
So I think, when I've thought about it, I think if you're going to take on something like a TED, I would say the 3 things that really, really matter. You need to consider it your storyteller on stage, right? And stories have amazing openings and challenges and white knights and dragons and an outcome. Don't leave them hanging. Do propose a solution. Try and complete the arc. Tell them what you're going to tell them. Tell it to them, and then tell them what you told them is the classic arc. Number 2, be authentic, right? This is something, it's deeply personal to you. It's completely not commercial. Give real value in service of the audience, in service of the speech, of what really matters. And then finally, enjoy it. I've been lucky to speak in front of 20,000 person audiences down to small ones. And it's an amazing platform. And if you enjoy it, and if you get attached to your talk, I think it comes through in a very genuine and affable way. And I think people find humor in it and they find delight in it. And I think that creates a social kind of wave beyond it, which helps progress the message out. So those are my key 3.
All right. Well, Stuart Lacey, thanks so much for coming on the talk today and sharing your wisdom with Talk Universe.
Thank you for having me.
All right. That's a wrap. So we lost Gauri. I was looking forward to the after interview little chat here. Now we lost Mark and we lost Elena. And now that I have a second, I'm going to go through this chat here. We had some little tech issues, and I wanted to make sure that, and Gauri excused herself. She needed to step out, which is totally understandable. So fortunately for them, I do a Saturday morning replay or backup. So hopefully we can catch them. But I'm pretty amazed, gents, because I think I'm right on track to hit would have hit 10 o'clock with 5 interviews done had they been here, which I've never been able to be that on point. I've never done this I've tried to do this, but I always find that there are like 1 or 2 that drop out for every 5. And before, when I did 3, there would be, 1 for every 3 that would drop out, and you're doing a 7-day-a-week thing, and you can't have too many of those. So anyway, thanks, Josh, for sticking around. We have a little bit of time right now. I'd love for the 2 of you to kind of converse. Josh, I thought there was some real parallels and to what Stuart was saying in terms of being flexible, being culturally sensitive, and not getting in the way of helping the event organizers plan and execute, even if it wasn't maybe your ideal situation in every situation, every choice out there. What were your thoughts? I'm gonna just kind of duck out here and let the 2 of you converse a little bit, and then we're gonna jump right back into it at 10 o'clock here.
Yeah, I don't know exactly. I didn't quite understand actually this experience that you had, Stuart. Was it that the organizers wanted you to change something about your talk, or you just on your own initiative you decided to tone it down a little bit?
Yeah, I was actually on my own initiative. I had gone out and sourced 3 interviews with people who had a completely contrary view to mine, of what I'd call a traditional view. And I thought it would show point counterpoint. And they're very well-known people. And as a result, when I was looking at my talk, I decided to take the high road and not put them up as targets, because it could have left bad blood, and it would have added a bit of humor, especially down the road. But then I imagined if the talk endures, and I had so much belief that the talk would endure because the subject matter was just so clear to me, that I didn't want to actually put them up and then have every person that subsequently hits my view look at these three people and have them embarrassed every time. And so I decided to cut that out. Yeah,
I think that's really smart. I in my head I've got images of two like extremes on either side of this. There's like the I don't know if you know Nassim Taleb, the author of The Black Swan, and he's sort of super acerbic. He loves to make fun of people, and I'm just reading his book, the new one, Skin in the Game, and he's just, every page he's insulting somebody, and I just also saw a talk of him online, and he said he does it on purpose to put his own skin in the game. He says if he doesn't agree with someone, he does it like in an almost offensive way, just so that if he's wrong, it hurts more. So that makes him more motivated to be right. And I think that's really interesting. That's an interesting approach. I hate it when people do it for another reason, which is just to make controversy so they can get an audience, which is, I think, what you see a lot of people doing. People like Rush Limbaugh and these kind of like extreme political commentators.
I'm a little bit different from Nassim. For example, you heard in the interview when Nathan asked me about Tim Berners-Lee. The reality is a very large part of the market completely disagrees with his approach. Right. He's using an antiquated tech stack. It's what he used to build the web. It doesn't work well in the new space, and almost no one is going that direction. But it's inelegant for me to say that publicly. And I don't want to gang up on him. And he's a tremendous proponent in the space, and his voice is incredibly valuable. And he's an icon in the space. And so as a result, what I can say is, and what I do believe is, he's adding massive value by bringing the conversation to the public, and by introducing different kind of tech, which, whether it wins or not, ultimately is helping everyone. So, I think there are ways of collaborating, but also respecting people that are desperately trying to do the right thing, whether or not their choice of mountain path is right. They're both trying to summit the mountain, and I give all my respect to both parties.
Yeah. Well, this is great. You can tell that I'm the only American in this conversation, because the two of you are just so
way too respectful.
You're so respectful. You're so honoring. And I'm the ugly American here, and all you need to do is put on one of our American news channels. It doesn't matter which one, and we're just going at the throat of the other party. And that's really one of the reasons those of us in the United States who love TED and love TEDx, I think that we're a little bit of an underground or above ground movement of solidarity and tolerance in the best sense of the word, where we can at least start spreading worthy ideas in a meritocracy stage, where not all the ideas make it on the stage, because not everybody really, has a stage worthy talk. But I just love this when I hear of people describing their experiences, and it was easy for you, Stuart, or you, Josh, to take a pot shot at somebody else, a real cheap shot, and have a fun laugh and get that immediate popularity from the audience. You refuse to do it, and that creates long-term win-win and trust. And then, hey, it might be me, falling on my face tomorrow. And I want a little bit of goodwill from the both of you, not to, snap a photo and upload that and make that go viral or something. That's the world that we live in. So, oh my gosh, how cool is that? So I'm going to bring on a guest here. Bill is in the green room. I really appreciate Bill because he's here super early. And he may be a little surprised that I'm mentioning him, but I appreciate this. Bill, how you doing, buddy? He is still working on. Now, this is one of these things where I bring him on and it kind of blanks out. Bill, are you there? Oh, we got a giant finger. There he is. Bill, how are you? Yeah, we're going to work on that. So I'll walk Bill back to the green room. Bill, I think the internet connection may be a little bit slow. So you may want to log back in, but we're actually doing fantastic on time just because we had a couple of technical opt-outs. So we're replacing that with some really good after interview stuff here. Looks like we may have Bill back. Let's try to bring him back again. I love that big ding. All right, Bill,
Hello?
Can you hear me? I heard a hello. Now we're going to try that again. Bill, can you hear me? Maybe, maybe not. Here's what I'm going to do. So green room again. Josh and Stuart, I just appreciate the both of you. Any other things? We are still actually Facebook Living. I should probably mention that. Everything that I can do to help advance these ideas, absolutely happy to do that. We've got our podcast with both of you. This is the podcast piece right here. That's going to go live in about 3 to 4 weeks. The Facebook Live is immediately available. And if you friend me on my personal profile, I can go back and actually tag you. Excuse me.
One thing I would say, Nathan, and I didn't mention it in kind of my final thing, but I took a lot of care in the talk to make sure that I talked to everyone from I had my youngest child in the audience at 7 all the way through to 80-year-olds, and to not use industry jargon and everything else. But there was a lot of humor in mine. I know you watched it. In fact, at some points with people literally busting a gut laughing. And I think these chats need to be entertaining for people to really enjoy them. And I think that's kind of one of the ways that, people don't want to watch 17 minutes of boredom. They want to watch an entertaining piece. And I think that kind of focus, I think it should do really well, I think, on, in the market.
Well, and entertaining, I mean, the idea we're spreading, the way that you spread the idea needs to be engaging. It needs to be entertaining, needs to be humorous. I mean, humor is really undervalued, and there's more than one kind of humor. Not all humor has to be dark humor or offensive humor or belittling humor. There's just old-fashioned, family-friendly humor or just funny humor. It's just the kind of humor that brings us all together instead of takes us apart. There just comes to mind to that point, Stuart and Josh, there's that American institution Saturday Night Live with all the comedians, and that is famously kind of tilted kind of on kind of a more progressive political bias. And sometimes it's so tilted that way that people take undue liberties. And so you had one of the comedians, this is recent news, about 2 weeks ago, right before our midterm elections, making fun of a war veteran who was seeking election in the House of Representatives, had an eye patch, and basically said the guy made a joke, made it sound like the guy was a hitman from an X-rated movie or something, and got some really cheap shot. Exactly what we're talking about right now. Got some cheap shot laughs. Everybody laughed. And he was ad-libbing, and not even the producers knew that he was going to do that. So even for Saturday Night Live, where they make a well-deserved jab in every direction, usually and kind of from a left of center perspective, because that's considered more forward. But this guy was ad-libbing so much, it was kind of borderline inappropriate. The veteran. And I'm watching this the next day on Hulu, because I don't stay up until 1 a.m. anymore to watch the show. But I'm watching it the next morning. I'm like, that guy's going to get elected. They just pushed that guy over the top. He did get elected. And before he got elected, he put a little tweet out, and he basically said, you know what? I try to be, I'm a war veteran. I've had a lot worse than this. This isn't a big deal. Now, that said, I don't know that my colleagues that have scars in battle think that should be something that they poke fun of. But he kind of masterfully downplayed it. They brought him on. Here's my point. They brought him on the next week. He's back, and he starts roasting the other guy who just got. I think he got dumped by the pop singer. So he's, he was engaged, and then it didn't work out, or maybe he broke. I don't know. And so his cell phone rings and interrupts, and it's the pop singer's ringtone. And so the guy's getting roasted right there. They brought him on the Weekend Update thing. You can watch it. And then they talked about how to get along together. And it was a very rare piece in the United States where we just voted for kind of more gridlock than we've already had. And yet it was a really amazing moment where people were role modeling a little bit for us. So I think that speaks to, Josh, your multiculturalism to the point of how you've changed your name every time you've got into a new culture, and you've actually won me over. And I think a lot of Talk Universe that's not some kind of stunt. That's what you do in a new culture. If you really want to serve the culture, if you want to assimilate into the culture, if you want to add value to that culture so that people are listening to you like we're listening to you now. Stuart, that absolutely fits into your narrative about, having the opportunity in some of these talks. You could have just delivered the, it's almost like that video game Mortal Kombat where you have that super like death blow at the end. Well, again, more American, horrible, violent video game references right there. But you didn't do that. You just gentlemanly and took the high ground. And that's really, it's called also playing the long game. So I am just really, honored to have both of you on. Looks like we have, let's do this. I'm going to escort you guys to the green room. We have Diana setting up. We have Bill set up. Looks like Bill's screen is still frozen. If anybody is watching this, I do have a Saturday morning backup for tech issues that didn't work. I have an 8:30 a.m. New York Times slot for that. We're going to bring Diana on here for just a moment and make sure that we can hear her, just because we've got a little bit of availability. So Diana, if you can see me, if you can hear me, wave. Okay, so she knows what I'm doing. Now, we are on Facebook Live, so I'm giving her a little bit of fair warning. And Bill, if you can hear me, if you can wave at me, I brought you on a couple of times and the screen was a little bit frozen. So I don't know if you can hear me or see me, but your footage is pretty slow. So I do have a Saturday backup slot, and hopefully the connection is better on Saturday. I'm just seeing you wave now. I'm just seeing you wave now about 15 seconds after I asked you to wave. So we're going to try this out. Stuart, Josh, thank you so much. I'm going to escort you down to the green room. Feel free to stick around if you're able to do that. If you'd like to do that in the background, you're free to. If not, totally understand. There is a Facebook alumni group, and I'd love to invite for you to be a part of that. Reach out to me. If so, because I do not automatically spam add people to Facebook groups, because about 429 people have probably done that to each of you, and they've done that to me also. So I don't. And you
respect their data.
I respect their data. Yeah, there we go.
I'm going to have to jump, if that's right, okay. Stuart. I'm going to have to jump to a meeting, but thank you so much for your time. Josh, all the best. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Stuart. You too.
All right, we're going to walk Josh back. We're going to walk Stuart back. Josh, thank you so much, and we're going to welcome. Bill. I'm going to give you one. We're going to do this one last time. I hope this works, my friend. Can you hear me? Can you see me? And it's just a slow connection, unfortunately, because I'm not hearing anything back from you yet, my friend. Let's go.
Are you there?
I am here, Bill, but there's about a 20-second
I can hear you
audio.
fine.
There's about
I cannot see you. I can hear you.
There is about a 20-second audio delay.
Okay.
So that is not quite going to work out. Just because I know you've been really working at this. Maybe what you can do, if you completely log out and then log back in again, hopefully the internet speed for you will be better. And it looks like Diana is pretty much ready to go here. So we'll just proceed with her. And we have, and you both are 15 minutes early, 20 minutes early, which is really, really awesome. So my suggestion, Bill, is I'm going to escort you to the green room. My suggestion for you, Bill, completely log out, maybe reboot the computer, come back in, and hopefully that will work. It looks like he's doing that. Diana, I like to interview from the opposite side, being on the left, and now I'm on the right. So we're going to both walk to the green room. I'm going to bring you right back on, and then we're going to prep and get this interview. So
sounds great. Do you want to do
like I can see you great. I can see you great. I can hear you great. We're gonna green room and do the little dose. All right, Diane, how are you?
I am doing so well. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning from dreary Atlanta.
Dreary Atlanta. My in-laws just expatriated from Atlanta to about 10 minutes down the street from me. And I love Lawrenceville and the Georgia mountains, and we are homesick for the ATL because we used to go there a couple times a year.
It's a beautiful place to live. Most of the time, we're just now in day 3 of torrential rainpour. So
torrential, yeah.
And we are the biggest whiners when it comes to bad weather here.
Oh, you really are. I wouldn't have said that, but yeah. Yeah, I remember the snowpocalypse, and the thing that people didn't understand when it snowed 2 inches unexpectedly, and the schools were out, and then the people were getting out of work early, and it just jammed everything up. What people don't understand is that the topography of Atlanta, even though it's the South, it's still hilly enough. It's not the low country. It's not flat like the Midwest.
Yeah, it's very hilly.
It is hilly enough that it would be an absolute nightmare, even in the Northeast, with that amount of hills, which we do often have hills in the Northeast, but we salt like the Dickens, and
we don't salt.
Doesn't happen.
We have no salt, and at that time we had 8 plows for the entire city of Atlanta.
Yeah, for 6 million people. I love it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's like 500,000 or 600,000. My wife doesn't like that I talk about this, but the actual city limits, it's only about 500,000 or 600,000 people, and then everybody else lives in a 50-mile circumference around there and commutes in and out, which is why you have such amazing roads. I actually spent when you had your white Christmas about 4 or 5 years ago. I was down there for that, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that was very cool.
Yeah. Well, good. So here's the situation, just so that you know, we are on Facebook Live, which allows us to immediately share and broadcast your interview without you having to wait 3 to 4 weeks for this podcast interview that I'm about to hit the button on to go live.
Okay.
And it's kind of it's been an interesting morning because I had 10 people. Usually when I have the 10 people, I have 5 for the first 90-minute slot. I believe you're in the second 90-minute slot, but you showed up early, which is great. And I had all 5 people show up, but then 2 had tech challenges. And then I have you and Bill showing up early right now, which is great. And I was starting to sweat bullets because I've never had. It's like the airlines. I've never had all 10 people show up before, but this is the best way to do a 7-day-a-week podcast when you've publicly put yourself out there.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
I actually thought I was going to have tech issues because I don't actually operate on Chrome. So I had to go through all that. And it's like, what is my face?
Oh, how did you do that?
Well, you have to kind of get on Chrome, and then it's like, what is my password? Like, I don't remember what my password is. So yeah, here I am. So I must really like you, Nathan. Right?
This is everybody on Facebook Live, Talk Universe. Slow clap for Diana, because it is a pain in the butt to have to go on the platform you're not using anymore and do all this stuff. So thank you so very much.
And rare is the podcast is actually broadcast live. So it's more about like bravo for you.
Not anymore. This plugin, this Facebook Live is actually, it seems like everybody and their grandmother is doing it now.
Is that a podcast or is that more of a TV live though? So
it's a Facebook Live. So this plugin generates Facebook Live, and the reason that I use this instead of Skype or the third party that I was is because it allows 4 people to talk to each other at a time. That's not the way I do the podcast. However, this being able to have people in the green room watching this, it cuts down on all the repetitive. Now we're going to do this. And did you listen to the podcast? It's all this stuff that I had to do one by one. I don't have to do as much of that. And it puts me on the hook, kind of elevates my, it's almost like an athletic level of interviewing, just because I'm like, if I am wasting time with 5 people watching at me, 5 very smart CEOs and, thought leaders and TED speakers and all these people, it actually causes me to give more of my best. So that's a good thing. The only reason I'm being a little chit chatty right now is because we had those 2 tech issues, and we actually have a little bit of a window right now. So Diana, if you can do something for me, if you can reach your laptop and actually pull it towards you just a little bit, there we go. I have a thing on the podcast. I never want to be like sitting higher than, especially the female guest, any guest that I have. So now,
is that better?
There you go. That's,
or
whatever you were doing before. Yeah. Cause you got some stuff behind you that's showing up in the feed.
That's right.
There. That's great. I can do this. I have a little external thingy right there. So I can just match your height right there. And we're ready to go. Really loved your talk. Just looking down in here we go. Got you right here. Power of Personal Story. Diana Keough is a Pulitzer. This is just my practice of the bio here, so I don't say anything wrong. Diana Keough is a Pulitzer Prize nominated journalist whose byline appeared regularly in the Cleveland Plain Dealer, where I used to live, NPR, PBS, and PBS. She's also an entrepreneur who successfully launched and then exited a digital creative services agency that started as a side project. And we have your LinkedIn profile is your main website, and it's the Power of Personal Story. We send people to the LinkedIn page.
That's fine. Yeah. And then the TED Talk is on there as well.
Okay, great. And I'm going to have in our show notes, I'll have a link directly to your talk and then to your LinkedIn.
All right, perfect.
So that they can see that. And then I'm just curious. We're broadcasting, but we're not recording the podcast right now. Digital services agency. So did you start something up and then spin it off, or what was the story there?
I actually started a website. I was living in the Cleveland area, and my husband took a job here, and I commuted between here and the Cleveland area for 2 years, and I had 3 of my 4 kids home. I was a front page series writer, had a great job. I was not only on radio, but I was also on television in Cleveland. Didn't want to walk away, but it was just unsustainable because I didn't live anywhere. So when I walked away, I started teaching journalism at Emory, but really missed telling stories. Missed interviewing, loved the teaching experience, absolutely loved it. And so I launched a website with 14 writers that were working for me. As a side project, literally a side project, and that's where this whole TED Talk even came from, is because I wanted to give an opportunity for people to share their personal stories as a way of healing.
Yeah,
that's where it all came. So, and that's
powerful is that.
Yeah, I started, and it was called Share What I Know, or ShareWick, which stood for Share What I Know.
Okay.
And
I saw that.
And we can actually talk about that because that is where the TED Talk is actually the behind the story behind where that thought came from, because I basically had no ability. I was silenced out of fear for 10 years not to share my story. And
I remember the talk. So we're going to get into that, and then we're going to pivot to the Emory. Are you still teaching at Emory? Because that's just to be able to have done that is absolutely huge in that region. My word.
And I left the company that acquired my company in June of this year, and now I'm working with an ad agency.
Okay, so you move fast. Of all kinds of, and then the medical journalism. So what scientific training do you have? Because that was interesting to me. I have a very medical family myself, and I'm not medical because. I don't have any medical training except the fact that I'm a journalist, and I don't take no for an answer very well. So I know how to research. It's really all about research and making sure that I depended on experts who were the experts to be able to tell the story that I did.
So to be able to, and I did it for so long that at any cocktail party, I get asked, what about this mole? I'm like, well, I think that's a basil, blah, 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 blah. But
So
you should go see, you should go see your doctor,
Well, that's great. I'm a former. I used to teach at a private graduate school up here in Philadelphia, and I was teaching instructional design, and it's the exact same thing. Maybe a little slower than journalism, because you have to get that, you have to make it so that it's not fake news, so that it's accurate, respectful, unbiased. Or as much as it can be. And instructional design is basically doing the same thing with the same subject matter experts, just for curriculum and things like that. So,
and when I was working for the Plain Dealer, it was just the internet was kind of just starting, right? So, but this whole ability to publish things without double sourcing or even single sourcing is ridiculous, right?
Yeah,
so
really.
That wouldn't have happened.
So this is cool. So we were in Cleveland at the same time. It sounds like in the mid 90s, a little early. I was in Cleveland in 93 to 2004. So I would imagine it kind of overlapped a little bit then.
Well, you probably read my byline in the newspaper.
Yeah.
So I started working for the magazine, and then they shut the magazine down, and then I started working for all the different sections. But yeah, I moved here. I moved here to Atlanta in 2006.
This is funny because I did a lot of temp work after college, and I was in the accounting department of all places. It's not a good place for me, but the accounting department in the Plain Dealer. So we were probably in the Plain Dealer at the same time.
Probably going up and down the stairs and everything else. So
all right. So enough chit chat. Oh my gosh, this is hard not to go down the rabbit hole here, but we are ready to rock. And if you can give me Diana a 5 count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
All right, and we are live in 3, 2. We are live with Diana Keough. Diana, are you ready to talk?
Can we go back and start again? Because you froze.
Yes, we can. We had a freeze. We had a very long, awkward freeze, and
we haven't ever had a freeze the entire time.
That was a great place for a freeze. Wow. Okay, we're gonna.
That was funny.
That was pretty strange because I'm flipping. I'm not flipping off. I'm flipping to my Excel thing for my bio, and I'm like, why isn't she saying it? And I have to flip back. We're in a freeze. Okay, 3, 2. We are live with Diana Keough. Diana, are you ready to talk?
We are ready to talk. Good morning, Nathan. How are you?
Diana Keough is a Pulitzer Prize-nominated journalist whose byline appeared regularly in The Plain Dealer, National Public Radio, PBS, and she is also an entrepreneur who successfully launched and then exited a digital creative services agency that started as a side project. Diana Keough, welcome to the talk.
Great to be here.
Your talk is called The Power of Personal Stories. Oh, my word. Powerful talk, because you came from a very kind of strict, maybe well-meaning environment and background, but 20, 30 years later, you found out tragically your father was living a double life. Your parents were both infected with AIDS in, it sounded like, the late 80s, when the stigma was at historic proportions. And through it all, you learned that there was a really important part of you that needed to be told, and you found a way to be able to share your story. So there's an awful lot there. Please take us behind the talk.
Well, I mean, just saying that I had two parents that died of AIDS, I'm sure that everybody's like, wait, what? So January 7th, 1988, I found out that my dad had been diagnosed with the AIDS virus. The doctors think that they were probably he was probably infected 10 years before. And this is, the 80s, late 80s. And as you said, it was the stigma, the horror, the kind of let's shove this under the rug, and it's only homosexual and it's only drug abusers and they're getting what they deserve, right? And I was my father was a senior law partner in Milwaukee. They had been church planters, And it would be like you or most of the listeners finding out that their father was leading a double life, right? It was that shocking. And then 3 weeks later, because the test took that long, we found out that my mom was also infected. Now, I'm one of 6 children. I'm number 5 in that birth order, and all of us were as shocked as anybody could be. We became almost piranhas or lepers in the little town that we were in outside the city of Milwaukee. My parents were church planters, so there were a number of churches that they had been part of starting in our living room, and my dad would lead those services, and then we'd go and financially help this a building be built, and then we would go on and plant another church. So I grew up very fundamentalist. I was baptized in the Episcopal Church. We left that church to start another one. Then I was basically walked down the aisles in a couple Baptist churches, and I walked down the aisles in a couple non-denominational churches. But it was a shock, right? So we had to move my dad out of town and change his name because we were being blackmailed by former lovers. And we moved my mom to the other side of Milwaukee. And Milwaukee is a little bit of a town that the East and the West, just like Cleveland, ironically enough, they don't actually mix very well or mix at all. And so for us, it was a level of safety that the communities were so separate that we moved my mom over from the west side to the east side of Milwaukee. And so, a lot of what happened is we were living in California at the time, and my first son, I have 4 sons, and my first son was about 6 months old when this diagnosis had happened. And what made it a little bit harder is that my mom and I had never really gotten along well. In fact, we had gone years throughout different periods of my life without speaking. I mean, years. I went to a college that she didn't approve of, and she stopped speaking to me for most of the time I was there. I took a job after college that she didn't approve of, and so she didn't speak to me or help me plan my wedding. So my period, I was actually living in California, and I was coming home for Christmas for the first time in 3 years. And when all of this diagnosis happened. And but in California, I would share with people that I'd gotten to know or friends that I considered very close friends what was going on. And it was either a deer in the headlights, or they would come into my home at another time and not eat or touch or drink. They would, I'd offer them something to drink, or they would come over for dinner and they would just push food around because everyone was afraid of getting it. Yeah, because of the stigma. And
we had no awareness. And I'm just going to offer a couple of things. Now, I've mentioned already today in other interviews, I mean, I come from a very healthcare family. So I remember being in junior high school-ish time when this was all going out, hearing debates, and actually similar to you, Diane, I come from a faith background, which is not always perfect and obviously very imperfect at times. And so so many ways that I'm really appreciating what you're saying here. But the stigma was absolutely huge. It was huge in the public. It was huge in the media. It was huge even in the medical community. And they're debating, what's going on. And these are the most highly educated medical people out there. So, I mean, Diana, the story is on, we're going to have a link to that, and there's going to be all kinds of opportunities for people to watch the story and get to the bottom of everything that you were able to endure. I think the biggest takeaway for me was for other people of faith or any kind of belief system, but especially if people coming from more of a traditional background, what really struck me about your talk is that the redemption of it, the amazing story arc. So you got to watch this talk and see how it gets, more twists and turns to come around. But I really appreciated how you were able to be so authentic, so vulnerable, so transparent, and yet, and not to make a judgment on your personal belief system right now, but you were able to honor kind of the beliefs that you had without just dismissing the whole thing. And the reason I mention that is because I think there are a lot of people that like TED Talks and they come from maybe more traditional backgrounds, but a lot of times there's a maybe a throwing under the bus or whatever. You didn't do that. You really honored the spirit of the entire thing. So I know this is a little bit of a dramatic pivot. I'd love to hear your take on that.
Well, and that's an interesting take on the talk, because there was a period of time that I actually did tell God, I don't believe you anymore. And if my dad could be such a liar, because he, of my parents, was the kind one. So what I didn't mention up front is all six of us basically blamed my mom for him going off into having these secret lovers and having this secret life, because she was so difficult to live with, which is, as a wife and a mother now, is just mortifying to me, right? That and understanding how things can be misperceived by your children. But imagine being married for as long as they are and never knowing that side of your husband, how lonely that could be, right? And he was, affidavit. People came to the door and claimed, "Hey, you're having an affair with your husband." Like a man would come to the door, and my dad, as a lawyer, would actually then get an affidavit saying, "Listen, he's a liar, and he's just wanting to, he did blah 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 blah." There's always excuses, right? So I think for me, I did walk away from my faith for a little bit. I mean, I was walking down the church. I still wanted my kids to go, but I would be walking down whatever church we were attending and looking at everybody up on stage or in the pews going, "Hypocrite, hypocrite, hypocrite, hypocrite," without knowing that we're all hypocrites, right? So, but I just assumed that everybody was doing that, right? And so, the trust issues became a huge issue. But as I talk about in my story, in the TED Talk, is that even though I told God I didn't believe him because he must have been a cosmic joke, when you tell God that you don't believe him and that you're going to have to prove yourself to me, it's like the prodigal son. It's like he was always waiting. The father was always waiting in the driveway, waiting in eager anticipation for the son to come home. But what happened is, as part of the talk, I was invited to prison, and there's a whole narrative arc here where my mom, as difficult as she was, and it was still making us cry, and we couldn't speak about my father in front of her, but for some reason I pursued her as a journalist, and I pursued my father as and with an arm's length, like I was interviewing them both, and that's how I handled this whole thing. Is I just had hours and hours and hours of tape, and that's how I could manage. So
you almost externalized,
absolutely,
and use that mechanism of journalism and interview, kind of like somebody that I know that interviews a lot of people.
Right.
You can go into interview mode. I'm in interview mode right now, and what a great device to be able to
when you're in that mode, you can't. It's not about you. So you basically are asking the questions and getting the answers without an emotional attachment, right? So the best stories, as Nathan, are the ones that you actually do feel something, right? And I'm often asked, it's like, especially since I've made a career out of telling a lot of these types of stories, how do you not get so sad? It's because, again, it's not about me, right? And if you tell the story with a redemptive point of view, and there's always redemption. There is always redemption, right? Otherwise, they're not ready to tell their story, for example. But that's a whole nother be the talk we could do, right?
Well, it certainly is. And I've got to mention right now, Diane, I think maybe we record a different segment for all of the other accomplishments that you've had. You've been teaching at Emory University. You're Pulitzer Prize nominated. You've done all of these things. You set up a side business that then got purchased and spun off, and you're doing all kinds of different enterprises. And that's the power of realizing that you have a story, you can share your story, and it's a really powerful thing to be able to do that. And I'd love for you to just speak to the power of this vehicle of TED Talks, TEDx Talks, because I just love it when I find people who have a real, everyone that I interview has a belief system. They all have an authentic, I would call it an authentic faith of some sort. They have a belief system. And it's very interesting to me to see other people that kind of come from a similar environment that I do, that tell an authentic story using this vehicle in an inclusive way so that everybody relates. And it's not, it's not anything other than sharing your story. What have you found? What advice do you have to other people that want to share their authentic story on this vehicle? And maybe they're coming from a more traditional background that is, a little bit played out in other circles? What can they do to give a good talk?
Well, I think it comes back to, I didn't make the story structure up, right? Joseph Conrad kind of put it on the map. But if you look back on all the great, like a Viktor Frankl story, The Man's Search for Meaning, who talks about the meaning of suffering only finds meaning when you find that meaning. And I did a very poor paraphrase on that, but everyone has a story, but what makes a story is if you find the so what of that story, right? So what did I learn? What are the mistakes I made? What are the lessons I learned? What, if I could do it all over again, what would I do differently? And if you look at the stories that we love, and what do they say? There's really only 4 basic story types in the world, and everything else kind of comes in that. But in the TED Talk, the ones that we are really engaged in, there's a narrative arc. So here's the situation that happened, here's the conflict, and here's the arc, right? And every TED Talk, or even every story that I tell, has that same narrative arc where the conflict and then the hero, or the hero is the guide. And if you look at the way that I set up the TED Talk, the guide comes in with a Carla Faye Tucker, right? With those of you that have not seen that, Carla Faye Tucker was a death row inmate that I was invited to go meet, that my mom had been spending a lot of time with, that basically she changed, just like it was a locomotive going 100 miles an hour that slammed into reverse. That's how big the change was.
Your mother changed. Your mother who all
before she died, she changed remarkably. And so out of curiosity, I had to meet, out of like that journalistic, I had to meet this woman that had changed my mother, because it was like, what did she do? Like drug her? What happened? It was so remarkable, the change. So, but that narrative arc in the TED Talk is like, here I met Carla Faye Tucker. And then I basically had the same change happen to me. Right. So, and I said to the woman that invited me, I said, and apparently, it's like, I wasn't as bad as, my mom is, because I was actually helping her write her book and typing as she was talking. And she said, every time I have trouble with, whenever I don't know what to do, say, or pray with somebody that I'm working with, and this is a woman in full-time ministry, I take them to prison. And I looked back, looked at her, and I wait, you invited me to prison. And I go, I wasn't that bad. And she looked at me and she said, yeah, you were. So meeting Carla Faye Tucker was, I learned a lot of life lessons. And, I had left my faith. Like I didn't believe in God. I was so angry. And of course I didn't know how angry I was at both my mother and my father, the situation, why me? Because everything was basically, the rug was everything I stood on, my family, the reputation, everything was gone. Right. So who was I? And so if you have nothing to hang your hat on, that's what makes prison such a remarkable place, is because the worst thing about everyone that's there. And the thing about grace is that even though the worst thing about that person, you're still loved. And so this whole storytelling arc and the whole, what I've made a living doing is making sure that people are heard and seen. And after being heard and seen, still loved. There's nothing that, you can tell me, there's nothing that, this woman that brought me to prison, nothing that you could tell her that would shock her, that would make her feel anything less about you. And when you bump up against that type of unconditional love, it's life-changing.
Powerful stuff. Well, we are going to pivot over to the final word of advice with Diana Keough in just a moment. Her talk is called The Power of Personal Story. We're going to have a link to that. You've got to watch this talk. It's incredible. So many twists, so many surprises, and in the end, redemption, really. It's a powerful talk. Go to our show notes page, BeTheTalk.com. We will have a link to The Power of Personal Story, Diana's talk in there. And we will also have Diana's LinkedIn website right there. And we'll have a link so that you can find out more about what Diana is up to. And we're going to pivot back over to Diana for the final word of advice.
Oh, gosh. On word of advice on putting a TED Talk together, or word of advice about getting out of bed in the morning each day?
Oh, whichever. Pick one.
I think the best TED Talks, and again, it's if you start studying the structure of story, and this structure of personal story, there's always got to be a so what, and that so what is the redemptive part and really the application on how is this applied to everybody that doesn't need to know about this. And as a storyteller, the way that I've always structured story is to make you care about something you wouldn't normally care about. If you don't have any diabetes in the family, I needed to have you care about the person that I was writing about. And that's what every TED Talk, when you're structuring it, it's got to be the so what, and how do I make anybody care about this? It can't be necessarily about you, which sounds counterintuitive, but it really is on basically setting up the story. So there's redemption, and the so what is very clear.
Diana Keough, thank you for coming on the talk today and sharing your wisdom with Talk Universe.
Thank you for having me, Nathan. It was great meeting you.
All right. And we are still Facebook Live, but the podcast is off at this point. Diana, I'm going to reach out to you. We need to record some more segments.
Oh, gosh. Thank you.
We skipped the Blitz round entirely just because I'm looking at that. We were a little long at 17 minutes, but it was just so rich. So there's a lot more there. And, the format's a little bit different, but that's okay. I've recorded 300 of these interviews. I'm the boss of the format. So,
oh, good. Isn't it nice being the boss?
Don't listen to that. And people are like, hey, you did a different one. No, this is all good. It's story. So we'll record some bonus content or something like that. I'll reach out to you, and you're more than welcome to stick around and watch these other amazing guests.
Well, I think I do need to get back to work.
All right.
As much as I'd love to spend the rest of the day listening.
Well, I'm not doing the rest of the day. This is the last batch, but thank you so much. And I'll reach back out to you, Diana.
Great, Nathan.
And actually, you know what? Before you go, so I think we have Karen here. So you're our newest Talk alumni. So you got to give Karen some advice with dealing with the likes of me before I let you go.
Hello.
Hi, Karen. Nice meeting you.
Great to meet you. I'm having a bad hair day. It's all frizzy, so I just went with the hat. I'm a creative person. I figured I got that.
Oh, I was in a hat. Yesterday was my hat day. So, in fact, I'm glad I actually noticed that it was on camera, because I'm like, oh no, I have to take a shower.
So you did fantastic. I'm like amazed by you, and you're a natural speaker too. You're just really great.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I mean,
and real and funny and smart and engaging.
Well, thank you. But as I said
in my interview, because you did that so well, just ask her my questions. I want her to talk for me.
You will be fantastic. So I have every confidence in the world in you. So you'll be great.
Thank you.
You got this, Karen. All right. So what I'm going to do, Diana, we'll say goodbye to you. Karen, I've got to switch back around and get on the left side instead of the right side right here.
Okay.
And while we're doing this, I'm going to bring Bridget and Jared on, because they've been awesome sitting here as well. So we're going to do this little four-peat here. Jared, can we hear you? Give me a little test.
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I can. And then Bridget, how about you? Can we hear you?
Nathan, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Awesome.
Can you hear me?
Yes, great. I can. All right. Now you're on the right. I'm on the left. It's all good. The video feed, I don't understand the way that they do this with the internet connection. It's looking a little grainy and slow on my end, but hopefully I can hear you in real time. Karen, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Awesome. Okay.
I do see the grain also, though. So just
the which?
You're a grain. I see. I don't.
Yeah, it's grainy. I don't. It's been kind of, and then when this thing gets sharp, like it looks like it might be getting now, then it looks great. And then when it gets grainy, I don't know what's going on. But anyway, we just make the best of it. Karen, if you can pull your laptop towards me a little bit.
Towards, what do you mean?
Towards you. Towards you.
Okay. Is that good?
Grow you a little bit. Yeah. Now we're pretty much even height.
Oh, okay.
So
you tell me. I'm new to this.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Do you happen to have any earbuds? Because I'm hearing a little bit of audio.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah.
I have a new computer, and it doesn't seem to be as friendly. Do you really need them?
Not absolutely, but I'm wondering if that'll improve your audio a little bit.
Are these like the type of thing that could do it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you don't need the fancy pants stuff like I have. You don't need anything like that.
Let me see if it works in this computer. Shish kebab.
Okay.
No, I have this new MacBook Pro, and none of the plugins are.
Oh, they don't have it. Okay, we'll deal with it. We'll go with what we have then. All right. So, where
sorry.
are we? That's okay. Karen.
Guest visitor. My dog is by my side. So
well, mine's probably outside the door.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it won't start barking. She recently started barking. All right. Karen Salmansohn. Am I saying your name correctly, Karen? Salmansohn is a best-selling author and award-winning designer with over 1 million books sold. Wow. Known for creating self-help for people who wouldn't be caught dead doing self-help, because she merges psychological with feisty humor and stylish design. Your website is notsalmon.com or salmon.com.
Not salmon.
Not salmon. Okay, so we say not salmon, but it's Karen Salmansohn.
Well, everybody says Salmansohn. I'm always going, not salmon, not salmon. And I figured if I had a,
like you just did to me.
Right. So,
yeah.
Oh my God, I have a little boy. And when he was like in preschool, his teachers were sending him home spelling our last name wrong. So I sent him back and I said, you tell them it's not salmon, and then you send them to my website, and I didn't say that, but I told him, you tell them it's not salmon.
Sometimes it's a losing battle when people insist on misspelling our names.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
I feel for you. All right. So we're going to go live here in a moment. If you can give me a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
All right. We are good. And we are live in 3, 2. We are live with Karen Salmansohn. Karen, are you ready to talk?
I am ready. Thanks for having me.
Karen Salmansohn is a best-selling author and award-winning designer with over 1 million books sold. She's known for creating self-help for people who wouldn't be caught dead doing self-help, because Karen merges psychological with feisty humor and stylish design. Karen Salmansohn, welcome to the talk.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Your talk is called Fun is a High Performance Fuel. And I love what you're talking about in the talk. You talk about really presenteeism as a bigger issue for employers than absentee issues. And you started all off with this heat wave and nobody coming up to the bar. So you put on a bathing suit, got the drinks, got the clipboard, and took orders from inside the pool where the people are. Kudos for your inventiveness and your flexibility, and really teaching all of us that the lesson learned that we need to work more fun hours for business success instead of just working more hours. And obviously that goes right into the talk. Karen, please take us behind the talk.
So the story, do you want me to tell my swimming cocktail waitress story?
Well, they can see that on the talk. We're going to give them the link, but I'd love just to kind of a big picture view of that whole talk, because that's, we want to go behind the scenes.
To say things that are all my life, I feel like humor and fun have brought me like so much in life. And my mother tells a story of when I first learned to walk, that she said that my brother learned sooner than me, but he kept giving up and he kept giving up. And then I just one day I said, okay, to myself, today will be the day I'm going to walk. I mean, is how it looked to her. So I got up one day and I started to walk across the living room, and I fell down on my little diaper tush and I giggled. And then I immediately picked myself up, took a couple more steps, fell down and giggled. So I kept doing this. And she said I learned to walk in one day. I don't know if this is family folklore or whatever. But I love this story because it's about how I laugh at things and it keeps me moving forward. And I always found myself telling stories with humor, like bad things that happened. I was like reporting them back to friends as a funny story. And just always trying to find the humor in the stresses in my life. And it's helped me. And so when I was a kid, I used to love to read Psychology Today and Mad Magazine. And I joke that if you took my books, if you took Psychology Today and Mad Magazine and put them in a blender, you would get my books. Because
now there are a lot of listeners who are going to want your magazine or want your book now, since you described Mad Magazine and Psychology Today.
But I feel people learn better when things are funny. That's what I'll tell you. A lot of people actually love to get their news from the funny people like Colbert and, Jon Stewart when he was big, or Noah, Trevor now, because a spoonful of humor helps like the world news go down. And you can even learn it. You retain it better. There are studies that show that people can actually learn about world news better from a funny reporter of it than a serious reporter of it. I mean, the studies go on, and I definitely peppered up my talk with a lot of research. So it's not just me like feeling like, oh, I think I retain it better when I hear it from Colbert. But no, it's true. And it's because of like how the brain works. A relaxed brain sponges it up, and that people, it's in the TED Talk, but I'll repeat it, people have a harder time learning when their brain is stressed and they're in stress mode. And so the more relaxed and even better, the more playful you feel, the better you learn.
Well, and we know that's a fact, and we know that that there are different states that you can get into, and you get into that playful, relaxed, fun state, and it's almost like the genius brain comes out, and it's a powerful thing. And that's what I love about the way you're describing, in your bio, in the way you describe your book, and in the mashup, all of that stuff, as well as the story at the beginning of the talk that people can watch about how you went to where the fish were, the human fish in the pool during the heat wave. I think that's a real key for the day.
I was joking. And
you were joking. So you weren't even trying to be a smart business waitress. Some of my book ideas have come to me as a joke. I'm like, it would be funny if, and then I'm like, oh wait, I think I'll turn that into a book. So it like sometimes when you're in that frame of mind, and when I've been working with people, sometimes we'll just be laughing. And then I'll be like, oh, wait, we forgot to work. And we come up with our best ideas after we have that kind of like foreplay of like laughing and joking. Then we come up with our best ideas. My word. Well, I mean, I always think about people in very kind of serious occupations, people, doctors or police officers or, firefighter people that they have no margin of error. I mean, what's the tagline for them? What can even people like that do to be playful in their life, to be able to have the benefit of having a relaxed mind, even when they're always in a crisis? You ever think about that, Karen?
Well, I think
out of nowhere.
It's funny. Yeah. I'm thinking about some of the professionals that I've hired in my life. I had dental work done recently, dental surgery, and my guy is hilarious. And I liked him because he was that way. And he's also known for being one of the best dental surgeons in New York. And I actually said, I liked him. So I said, I'm going to sneak you into a book that I was writing, a longevity book called Life is Long, because I found some research that says that that the better you take care of your teeth and you brush and you floss, it actually helps like prevent heart disease, because bacteria from your gums and everything can get into your body. So I wanted to interview him because I like him. And he said something funny immediately. He's like, be true to your teeth or they'll be false to you. And it's like, he's just like this. But I feel funny people are really smart. And I'm like, okay, I want the funny guy to do my dental. And he has a reputation for being one of the best. So I would say that I don't know where I'm going with this, but I do think that there's a correlation. If you're able to find the humor, I think there's a level of intelligence that goes with that, and calm, that you kind of feel like he relaxes you. And the whole thing went better because of that. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I felt it did.
It helps to be smart and it helps to be funny. And we've been enjoying this conversation with Karen Salmansohn. Her talk is called Fun is a High Performance Fuel. And we're pivoting over to you, Talk Universe. In just a moment, we're going to start the Blitz Round. And it's time for the Blitz Round with Karen Salmansohn. I'm going to ask her a series of either-or questions related to the preparation and performance of her recent talk. Karen, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. First question. Were you invited to speak or did you apply?
I had a friend who was invited to speak. She got nervous and she asked me if I wanted to take her place. True story.
Ah! And did they let you do that?
They did.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's a little surprising.
So I didn't apply. It
that.
just kind of landed in my lap. I'm like, okay.
I think that's the first. That's the first I've heard. Well, congratulations. All right, next question. Are you a memorizer, improviser, or blender?
Blender.
How does that serve you?
Yeah, blender for sure.
Yeah. How does that work for you?
I like to ad lib. I'd like to know where I'm going. I'm kind of both logical and creative. Like there's a method to so I definitely need a structure for sure. Otherwise I won't feel safe. But once I feel safe with the structure, then I can kind of let myself go off and then come back again.
Karen, what's a tip, tool, or technique that helped you?
Well, I made sure the slides had enough words on them, so they kept me kind of like anchored where I was going next. And then I memorized like at least 5 points that I knew I had to hit. So in case I went too wacky, I could just know my 5 points and get back on track.
And again, you were basically substituted in. How much time did you actually have before that happened?
I remember the night before the hotel room going, okay, all right.
But not much time. I mean, did you have a month? Did you have 2 weeks? I mean, interesting.
I had a couple of weeks.
You had a couple. That's not a lot of time. So what you did actually makes a lot of sense if you only had 2 weeks.
I might have been 2 to 3 weeks. Yeah.
2 to 3 weeks. So okay, well, great. What was the most unexpected, strange, or just plain weird thing that happened during or right before your talk?
The slide where I say that when you're nervous, you lose 80% of your ability to think and you can stumble on your words. I wound up on that slide exactly stumbling on my words, which almost looked like I did it on purpose just so I could reference it. But the slide was about that. And that's exactly what I did. I kind of like, and then I just, owned it. I'm like, yeah, well, this is an example of that.
Well, that's a little extra meta for you right there, because you're thinking of it and you got all those words on the slide, which is not necessarily the best practice unless you get swapped in from your friend. Your friend taps you in, and two weeks later you have this talk, which is kind of a first. I haven't heard that. I've actually coached people that have very short amount of time, so I've never heard of someone that tapped in a friend. Now it helps that you're a mega best-selling author, so I'm sure that does not hurt as well. But to do it that way, that's very, very interesting, right there. So what was the most painful part of your talk that you had to cut out for time? Where'd you go? Karen, where'd you go? Come back. Wow, don't tap out on me there. No. I think we're having a real tricky tech day today on multiple fronts. So I'll just ask you the question again. What was the most painful part of your talk that you had to cut out for time?
You see, that was meta. You talked about cutting out, and then I got cut out. So we're like, I think I had a lot more research. I just remember I wanted, in a general way, it was hard for me because I write books, I write long books. So to narrow it down to that amount of minutes, I think it was just overall, I also like to joke around, and I wanted to make sure that I put in enough research. I probably would have joked more in it, if I had longer time, like made it more funny and fun. But I did try to slip it in.
Yeah. Well, and kudos to you for putting in the research, because a lot of time, humor, like we started the interview, humor is great, and it needs to be counterbalanced so that people don't suspect that it's kind of a one-trick pony kind of thing. If you can put real relevant research in there and let people know there's a real basis for what you're taught, why you're up there instead of them, given the TED Talk, that really helps put people at ease.
Yeah.
So where did you go to research, and why was that? What was your methodology for that?
Well, this was a topic that was on my mind, and I also like to give talks at companies, and so it was something I had already been talking about with companies: presenteeism and absenteeism, and helping. There was a statistic, 85% of people hate meetings. So how do you make meetings more fun? So I'd already been, talking about this, and it was much longer. That's part of it. I was like, giving hour-long seminars and stuff like this. So to shrink it down to, TED Talk length was a little bit tough.
Well, we've been enjoying this Blitz Round with Karen Salmansohn. Her talk is called Fun is a High Performance Fuel. And you can hear us touching on all of the aspects of the fun, the high performance, the fuel, all of that stuff. Now, we want you to actually watch Karen's talk. You can do it at bethetalk.com. If you don't want to type all that into YouTube, go to bethetalk.com. In the show notes page, we'll have a link there. We'll also have a link to Karen Salmanson's website, which is notsalmon.com. Not in salmon, SALMON.com. There's a little bit of inside joke about Karen's son and educating the teachers at school about the proper pronunciation of her name. So I think that was behind it. We're going to come back to Karen in just a moment with the final word of advice. And we're back. It's time for the final word of advice with Karen Salmansohn.
So my word of advice for people to give TED Talks, find something that you can't shut up about, that you just want to talk about all the time, and then make yourself narrow it down. But it has to be in your craw. It has, actually, I tell people, they come to me for branding too, and I say to them, what would your TED Talk be? Because that's your passion. And that should be also part of your brand and part of your company. What you'd give a TED Talk about is not just important about, TED Talks. It actually says something about you and your life. And both questions go both ways. If you have a brand, what would you give a TED Talk about is also another good question.
Well, Karen Salmansohn, thank you so much for coming on the talk today and sharing your wisdom with Talk Universe.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. Hey, did I get the joke right about the son and the teacher?
Yes.
I picked that up right?
All
okay.
Good.
Very good.
Good.
Hey, great interview. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
My gosh. Yeah. And okay, so we got Jared, Bill, and Bridget. Bill, you have been unbelievably tenacious. And it looks like, because it took you about 5 seconds from when you looked up to me after I said your name, I think we're still having issues. This is what I want to do for you, Bill. I am going to give you a Zoom link, and you and I are going to record on a different platform so that the tech thing is not a problem for us, because you've been super tenacious for like the last hour plus on here. And I can tell there's still that lag. There's even kind of a lag on my end right now. So I don't want you to be any more frustrated by that. I will send you a Zoom link. We can do that in about a half hour after we're done with Jared and then Bridget, if that's okay with you. And I'll do this. I'm going to do this right now. Unlike Be Live, I actually have a Zoom link that I can post in there And if you can reply to my chat acknowledging that you saw that, and if we can, I don't know what time zone that you're in, Bill, but I could give myself a little bit of a break, if that's okay, and jump back in with you at let's say, I'm trying to calculate too much, 11:20 New York time, if that works. And if you can type into the chat whether that works for you or not. And if it doesn't work, I really apologize, and we will absolutely set something up for you. But I want to just acknowledge that. So let me know either way how that works for you in the chat. Jared, let's bring you on, and we'll have a little advice from Karen to Jared here. Jared, how you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you guys?
I'm doing good.
Awesome. Great job, Karen.
Thank you. Thank you. So advice,
Bill.
He's a great interviewer. Just let fun be your high performance fuel.
All right. Okay. There you go. All right. I'm excited for it.
And coffee. A little fun, a little coffee. You'll do great.
Okay,
All right.
great.
Awesome. Okay, so we're going to do a big green room walk around here. And then we're gonna jump on with Jared. Actually, Bridget, I want to hear from you. How are you doing down there?
I'm doing great. Enjoying
All right.
this. Thank you.
Yeah, well, it's a very high, fine tightrope line between seeing all the faces down in the green room who can't see each other, and me interviewing someone for the 7-day-a-week podcast. So it's great to know that it's high quality, and I am keeping everything moving and everything else. So we're gonna step into the green room. I'm gonna zip around to the what I'd like to be on the left side of Jared here. Karen, thank you so much. Feel free to stick around if you wish, and thank you all so very, very much. All right, and Jared and I are back. We're ready to rock this thing.
Perfect.
Now we got to pull Jared up in my... Jared, there you are, Jared. Okay. Pillow Talk with the Hidden Boss. Oh, yeah.
That's right.
This is great. All right. Jared, if you could give me a 5 count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I'm going to practice your bio.
Okay.
Jared Olsen is a father, husband, entrepreneur, culture enthusiast, and millennial. He is the co-founder of Rafia. Am I saying that right?
Yep. Think of a ray of sunshine, a fee, money, and a Rafia.
Rafia. All right.
Yep.
Rafia, a culture consulting business in the Silicon Slopes. He is on the board at Disrupt SLC, Salt Lake City, correct?
Yep. Disrupt SLC.
I'm going to say that because we have a global national.
Disrupt Salt Lake City. Perfect.
Salt Lake City. Disrupt Salt Lake City, and was named as the first ever human resources disruptor of the year in Utah. The disruptor of the year. That's this. We're gonna have fun with that.
That's
All
right. Good.
All right. We are. I'm not going to go into that yet. We're live in 3, 2. We are live with Jared Olsen. Jared, are you ready to talk?
Oh, I'm so ready.
Jared Olsen is a father, husband, entrepreneur, culture enthusiast, and millennial. He is the co-founder of Rafia, a culture consulting business in the Silicon Slopes. He's on the board at Disrupt Salt Lake City, and he was named as the first ever, get this, human resources disruptor of the year in Utah. Jared Olsen, welcome to the talk.
Oh, Nathan, thank you so very much. I'm really excited to be here today.
Your talk is called Pillow Talk with the Hidden Boss. I love the references here. Now, I got to be careful with millennials because when I do a Seinfeld reference, a lot of times it just kind of
I get them.
back. But
Seinfeld's the best.
You know where I'm going with this. A lot of references to not directly, but I couldn't help thinking of George Costanza sleeping under the desk. And that actually came up as something that you've had to work with as a human resource disruptor, hopefully not advocating this Costanza method, but you had all kinds of presenteeism issues and all kinds of things like that. Take us behind the talk.
You bet. So human resources is I've been practicing for the last 15 years, and human resources gets a bad rap. I mean, when people think of HR, they think of Toby Flenderson from The Office. They think of Dolores Umbridge from Harry Potter and people who love bureaucracy and red tape. And I have really not wanted to be that kind of HR person, and I've wanted to think outside the box quite a bit. So I'm a father, as you mentioned, and we have 3 kids. I also have some cameras that are around my house that we use for security purposes. And every once in a while, I just like to peek in and see what's going on at home. And as I do that, I see my kids some of the time having fun, and some of the time I see chaos happening. And my wife is a stay-at-home mother, and I just know that she needs help some of the time. And so as I was looking one day at the cameras and I was seeing the chaos at home, it occurred to me, I just want to run home right now and help my wife. Like, she needs some help with all these kids. And if I were to do that, I'm going to leave my 40-hour work job, and they probably won't like that. But if I did get home, I know that my wife would say, give me a break from this. I want to go contribute in a meaningful way, and I'm just in a different setting. And so I thought, why?
Funny that we want to swap roles. If we're domestic, we want to be working, and if we're working, we want to be domestic.
It's so true. And historically, that's never happened. And it hasn't happened because when we hire someone for a position, we want them to work that one specific job. And like, that's one of the issues with traditional job descriptions is you're hired and you're said, hey, you're the most unique person out there, but we want you to fit inside this one piece of paper, even though you can do stuff that goes in other areas. And it limits what we as employers get from our talent because we're not willing to see them for all that they can bring.
And this is where I'm the 43-year-old millennial, because I've always hated this cubicle 40-hour-a-week thing. Yeah. My father was self-employed. He set his own hour. He probably worked triple a 40-hour week, but he did it on his terms. Yeah. I've always wanted to do the same thing, hence interviewing 10 people in a row on this podcast on a morning. I think there's a real piece of it's autonomy, it's knowing ourselves, it's entrepreneurism, all of these great things that you bring. And you have some great suggestions. You have some first suggestions that I've ever heard, but I love your talk, Jared, because you're making all kinds of suggestions, one of which being my term, not yours, but the tag team power working couple. So tell us a little bit about that and some of the others.
Yeah, absolutely. So the idea of job sharing exists. That happens. We see it all over the place, but we really don't see that within employees and their spouses. So imagine if I wanted to just come to work and get my job done. Well, the law of diminishing returns tells us that there's a point where we become ineffective. And you talk about the traditional work environment. There's a really great book called Work Sucks and How to Fix It. And it focuses on the results-only work environment. And it says, why do we go to a brick and mortar to do virtual work? And why do we have to clock in from 8 to 5 if our productivity and our job can be done in less amount of time or at odd hours? And so if we look at what I can do for an employer, it's very different than what my spouse can do for an employer, but both of those skills will benefit the employer at the end. And so the idea that I'm trying to get out there is, why don't we hire, instead of one full-time person, a couple? Why don't we hire whoever that confidant is? You might not be married, and if you're single, then it's your best friend or your roommate or your partner or whatever it is. But for me, it's my wife. And so instead of hiring me and say, hey, Jared, we want you here Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, why don't you say, we need someone between you and your wife in the office Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. And if she needs a break, I can go home. And if I want a break, she can come to the office, and we can flip-flop and provide the values that each of us bring to the organization. And you see that within entrepreneurship, but you don't see that within traditional, like a marketing position or an accountant. And if you have like-minded skills between a couple, why wouldn't you want that? Why wouldn't you want the additional resources that they could really provide? And so that was one of the ideas. Another one is to have like the CEO or C-suite get up at a quarterly State of the Union or State of the Company, and actually talk specifically to spouses about the concerns that employees are dealing with. And that's where HR can provide a lot of that information, like employee net promoter scores and employee surveys. And the research that I've done have showed that right now in America, we're struggling with career advancement. And so imagine a CEO getting up in front of the spouses and saying, hey, here's where we're experiencing growth. And this is the avenues in which our employees can take to get these promotions. And at the end of every day when we go home, we talk to our spouse or our confidant and we confide in them. And it's our spouse that at the end of the day is the one who says, you should quit your job and find a new opportunity. So if the CEO is getting up and saying, hey, stay with the company and here's how they can move within the company, then the spouse is advocating for the organization. And so that's one idea. Another idea is to involve spouses in performance reviews. So imagine your annual review where you get a raise and your boss is there to talk to you. And your spouse joins you. Your spouse can ask those difficult questions to your manager that maybe you don't have the courage to ask. And I think it would be helpful and a healthy thing if your performance is good, and maybe even if it's not, to hear in front of your spouse, your manager tell you where you need to improve. And then as a couple, you can plan on how to make those changes.
I mean, that almost sounds to me, I'm not trying to be silly here, but it almost reminds me of like a parent-teacher conference, only you bring your spouse in there. I mean,
yeah.
This is really what I love about talking to Jared. You might be listening to this. You'll watch his talk. We're going to give you a link to his talk, and some of these are pretty forward-thinking, out of the box. You might have an opinion on some of these ideas already, but what I love about this is that there's a really high level of emotional intelligence that Jared is bringing to the table with these suggestions. Now, can every super traditional company in Salt Lake City, which is probably one of the most traditional cities in the country, I mean, you're the disruptor of the year of possibly the most traditional city. I've been to beautiful Salt Lake City. I've done the tours, appreciate things there, but it's interesting to me because you want to be forward focused. Well, you're going to have a high level of intelligence before Sears happens to you, like what happened to Sears a month ago. So I mean, you can laugh at this a little bit. You can say, hey, this is what would that address the spouses? You'd have rocks thrown at you, or well, maybe that's an evidence of your company really needs to change, even if it's kind of a commodity company, if it's a traditional company or whatever. Maybe that's just an indication how crazy these ideas may seem. It's an indication of how not forward your company is and how you need to be thinking about some of these things. So my question to you, Jared, is, in a city like Salt Lake City, you're the disruptor of the year. You're in the most traditional industry, the human resources industry, with the Toby Flendersons and all, everybody else like that. So how do you advance these things? Do you basically put it up against the reality of, there are no more workers in the McDonald's. There are a bunch of kiosks at the front desk of McDonald's, and that's because these suggestions. Do you advocate with the reality of where business is headed in a hyper competitive Amazon culture, or do you do something else?
Yeah, great question. So HR is, as you mentioned, been around for a long time, and they are the red tape people. And when you think of the traditional HR, so let's just talk about talking about family. Like, we're conditioned as HR professionals not to talk about familiar relations, and it's because so this is actual lawsuit that happened. A recruiter interviewed a candidate, walked them down to their car to thank them for coming in. While they were there, they saw a car seat in the back of the car. The candidate didn't get hired, sued the employer, and said it was because they were discriminated because they were parents and they were fearful they wouldn't have daycare for the kids. Right? So this is where traditional HR comes in and says, all right, never ask about family and don't ever walk a candidate to the car. And I want to look at opportunity cost. I want to say, what's the advantage and the risk? Like, what are the odds you're going to walk a candidate to the car and they're going to sue you? Super, super small. But what's the reality that your employees are going to listen to their spouse more than their manager? guarantee, right? And so you weigh the opportunity cost, and that's where I say, let's ask those questions. Let's find out about their spouse. Let's interview them during the process. Let's ask about their kids and get to know who these people are. And in a market like Salt Lake City, I mean, we're the most youthful state in America, more millennials than anywhere else. And we also have crazy big families, right? And because we do that, family is really important to us. And so it's easy actually to influence this change, because when people think of HR, they think of a grandma who hires, fires, and answers benefit questions. That's what I thought when I got into the profession. And there's so much technology coming in, like you mentioned, the kiosk at McDonald's. Well, you can automate the large majority of administrative functions that happen within an HR department. And just by getting the right tools and systems into place. And we're seeing AI and deep learning and machine learning automate these things to the point where we can become strategic and where we can start looking at a business P&L, and we can actually see where the inefficiencies are, link that directly to people, and then how to motivate those people more, and how to create career advancement, and how to work with leadership, because those are the top two reasons that there's turnover actually happening. And so I'm really trying to advocate to change the HR profession and looking at opportunity cost. And all of the research I have shown has said, if you make family a priority for your employees and you treat them like they're a member of your family, that creates a culture, right? And culture is a social experience. We leave our family to go socialize with people at work. And so it all comes together in one thing, and it has no red tape, and it's almost all organic, and it puts the decision-making down to the employees, and it creates a much better environment.
Well, and really what I'm hearing from you, Jared, you're thinking like an executive. Basically, you're thinking like a leader with great empathy instead of just kind of a manager or someone like that. Because as you say, I mean, my words, not yours, but the heart of what I feel like you're saying is, you know, we can create really amazing bots. So when you go on there, and it's like, I even had this with one of my guests, had this amazing, you know, usually when I reach out to Jared, and then Jared reaches back out, and I say, Jared, I want to bring you on Be the Talk. Great talk. I reviewed it, whatever. And we have this back and forth, and I send the link, and you know the process. Well, I had one gentleman that I reached out to, and like immediately once I had given the link, he had signed up. I'm like, well, how did your assistant? And the assistant was doing all of this, which usually that's a little bit goofy. It was a bot.
That's awesome.
It was a bot. Awesome. It was a artificial until I find out later. I'm like, that's why I couldn't, you know, put in my little extra word and have them do this, and they did that, and it was a bot. And so
I've been talking to companies. I've been talking to companies that have bots that will help you determine if discrimination or harassment has occurred in the workplace. So instead of going and talking to something, you bot chat, and then it tells you, you're being harassed, and then it notifies HR at the right time after the investigation has happened. I mean, it's crazy.
That's hilarious. Are you sure that bot wasn't made by like a legal firm or something like that? Like all the different threads go to yes, you've been wrong. Go to, you know, see our commercial on Channel 4 or something. Yep. Well, but we're having fun with this. But the reality is, people are people. We all have feelings. That's why we're not machines. That's why this isn't, you know, this is why it's wonderful to have real people instead of a bunch of howls or a bunch of, you know, whatever the right movie metaphors are. And Jared, you're thinking like an executive with great empathy, which is really the only thing that's separating us. And I've had other guests that I've brought on who have actually automated their own cover sheets with all the taglines and all of that stuff. And there are ways to do all of these things. And the takeaway from that conversation was that if you don't have empathy, if you can't relate in a human way to connect with people inside the company, you're not even getting an interview. You're not even getting a callback or acknowledgement. So
it's all about emotional intelligence.
It is. And it's really about disruption through empathy, because that's the only strategic advantage that we have is that empathy.
Empathy is an emotion, and emotion is something you can't hide. It's just on your sleeve, right? And so if you can tag into the emotion of the person and find out what they're thinking and explore that with them and be an advocate for them, then you get more out of them, you get more connection with them, and you develop a true, genuine relationship.
Yeah, well, we've been enjoying this conversation with Jared Olsen. His talk, There we go. His talk is called Pillow Talk with the Hidden Boss. And we're going to pivot over for just a couple of questions over in the Blitz Round. And we're back with Jared Olsen. It's time for the Blitz Round. I'm going to ask Jared a couple of questions, either or questions related to the preparation and performance of his recent talk. Jared, are you ready?
I'm ready.
First question, were you invited to speak or did you apply?
I applied, and I actually applied. I heard about it one day, and I went online, and it was closing that night, and I applied about an hour before it closed. I spent no time on the submission process. I just copied and pasted from a previous talk I had done, and I thought, there's no way I'm going to get selected to speak at a TEDx event with this bucket thing I've already put together. And I was selected. I was blown away.
You got it. Oh,
Yeah.
my gosh. Well, that I've heard one other story like that. And usually doesn't happen that way. That's why we try to help people get accepted and become stage worthy. But congratulations to you. Are you a memorizer? Are you an improviser? Are you a blender?
I'm a blender. I like to blend. I like to do a lot of preparation beforehand, but when I get up, be able to adapt to the situation and to the audience and to my thoughts and take it in different places.
What's a tip, tool, or technique that helped you?
I previously spoke in an event that I really enjoyed. It was creative. You have 5 minutes on stage. You have 20 slides that auto rotate every 15 seconds, and it forces you to really know your content super well and to stay on time. And that really helped me, I think, quite a bit to go through that process and do other speaking engagements. Like if you speak in front of people, then you'll be fine. But that event really taught me the importance of time management and making sure that you're advancing the conversation.
You know, it's just striking me right now. I think that's a better way to prepare for a TED Talk or for any other talk if you're doing. Do one of these slide events where you only have 30 or 20 seconds per slide, because even a TEDx, 18 minutes, some places will still give you the full 18 minutes. And when they do that, there's a real chance if you're taking up 18 minutes instead of aiming for 14 or 10, you're going to blow over time. So
absolutely.
Powerful way to do that. What was the most unexpected, strange, or just plain weird thing that happened before or during your talk, Jared?
Unexpected. So, there's a dry rehearsal beforehand, and that was awesome. It was during the day. The actual event was at night, and when those spotlights were on, it was pitch black, and it caught me by surprise. Like I normally see faces and interact with the audience a little bit more, and I got up there and I was on a planet of my own. There was nobody else to see. I couldn't see the slides. I couldn't see the time. It was pitch black, and so that threw me a little bit as well.
Well, sometimes those of us we're used to performing and used to just seeing black and the light and being blinded by the light. And for some of us, I've talked to a number of people, and my own experience was the opposite. So there was ambient light in the room. I was expecting just a spotlight, and I just go into my thing. And no, I could see all the people in the room because it was an afternoon. So either way, it's kind of jarring if you expect one and get the other. Powerful thing.
Especially if you have a preference.
Yeah, especially if you have a preference. What was the most painful part of your talk that you had to cut out?
Normally when I do a presentation, it's an hour and a half. And so it's always difficult to scale things down. I think the most painful thing were additional case studies of other couples that are successfully working together, and other companies that have really made spouses a huge emphasis. Because of time, I was really only able to share just a few examples, and one specific couple, Nate and Vanessa Quigley from the founders of Chatbooks, which are awesome. But there were several other people I had the chance to interview and talk to, and I would have loved to share their story as well, but time just didn't permit.
Well, we've been enjoying the Blitz Round with Jared Olsen. His talk is called Pillow Talk with the Hidden Boss. You can look at that talk at our show notes page at bethetalk.com. You can also go to Jared's LinkedIn page, which we will also have a link to his LinkedIn page at bethetalk.com in the show notes. And we'll be back with Jared Olsen in just one moment for the 20-second final word of advice. And we're back with Jared Olsen. What is the final word of advice?
if you're going to do a talk, find something that nobody's ever heard about before. We hear lots of similar things from different people, and come up with an idea no one has heard and explore it, study it, celebrate it, fall in love with the idea, and then get on stage and tell everybody about it.
Well, Jared Olsen, thanks so much for coming on the talk today and sharing your wisdom with Talk Universe.
Nathan, thank you.
Hey, that was a lot of fun. Thanks for keeping the final word to 20 seconds.
No problem.
I'm looking at the tick, tick, tick here. Bill, all right, you gave me a thumbs up before. We've got a Zoom date in about 20 minutes at this point, correct? So I will see you over there, and we're going to bring Bridget on. And Jared's advice to Bridget as I stretch.
Bridget, my advice is the whole blended question. Don't prepare anything. Just start talking and have fun with it.
Okay.
Yeah, I honestly haven't
Jared.
prepared for this hardly at all, and I'm glad that I didn't, because I felt like
You
it was
don't
more
need to,
natural.
this isn't you've already
Yeah.
prepared for your talk. This is not a pop quiz. You don't need to do anything special.
Yeah.
Right.
For
Great
sure.
advice.
All right.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, we're going to all go back to the green room
Thanks,
and
guys.
sit back up here with Bridget and Josh or Jared. I'll reach out to you separately as well. And in case you didn't all hear, we do have a Facebook alumni Facebook group that I do not add people to unless they want to be added to, because 400 people have probably already done that to you. They've done it to me. But that's the best way for us all to stay together and connected and whatnot. So. All right, Bridget, how are you? Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you okay. Yeah,
Great.
we are good. All right, Bridget Sampson Communication Consulting CEO, designs and delivers cutting-edge professional development programs for clients such as Google. With a master's in communication studies, Bridget has been an award-winning university lecturer for 26 years. Is that? It kind of cut off on that. So there we go. 26 years, correct? Not weeks or days or months or
Yes.
just making sure. All right, great. And we got the LinkedIn right there. We also have, Communication Secrets Success is the book. Is that correct? The Amazon book right there?
It's Communication Secrets for Success. Yes.
For success. All right. So I'll mention that in the bio so that we don't miss that.
Great.
Yeah. All right. How public speaking will change your life. And if you can give me a 5 count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Bridget, if you can give me a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Awesome. All right. And we are live in 3, 2. We are live with Bridget Sampson. Bridget, are you ready to talk?
I'm so ready.
Bridget Sampson is the CEO of Sampson Communication Consulting. She designs and delivers cutting-edge professional development programs for clients such as Google. With a master's in communication studies, Bridget has been an award-winning university lecturer for 26 years. She is the author of Communication Secrets for Success. Bridget Sampson, welcome to the talk.
Thank you, Nathan. Thrilled to be here.
Your talk is called How Public Speaking Will Change Your Life. And you talk about all these amazing gifts that we have symbolizing the meaning and the takeaways that people get when we step up to talk. You talk about the fear of public speaking, which is a very, very common fear. And it's just a great how-to. It's almost like a crash course in public speaking, why you should do it, when you should get started, and how to go forward from here. And love to hear you take us behind the talk, Bridget.
Great. Thank you. Yes. Well, my work involves the academic side where I teach public speaking. I teach advanced public speaking and beginning public speaking and have been doing that for many years. And then I also work in the corporate world, training and coaching and helping people to overcome their fear of public speaking and develop really powerful talks in their professional lives. So between those two worlds, I've just developed this passion for helping people understand that that we each have a message within us. I think we have many messages within us, but I think for each of us, there tends to be this one burning need to share this message with the world, whatever it may be. And so many people never do that because of their fear of public speaking. I mean, the research says between 75 and 85% of people have a significant fear of public speaking that causes them to avoid it. So for me, it's just part of my mission in life to help people overcome that so that they can put that message out into the world, because I believe I truly do believe there are people out there who are waiting for that message from each of us, who need it to self-actualize, to be who they are meant to be in the world. So that's, I think, one of my greatest passions. And that's what really caused me to go after getting this talk and to be able to share it with a wider audience, because I've spent decades sharing it in small settings and trainings and university classrooms and with many, many people, thousands of people. But I thought if I could give a TEDx talk about this, I could reach so many more people who might be inspired to share their message with the world.
Well, the question that I have, Bridget, I mean, when did it all start with you? When did you start sharing your story? When did you get into this whole public speaking thing?
Gosh, well, it really starts in 5th grade when I had to give my first speech. I was terrified.
5th grade, all right.
And I had these index. Yes, I don't even remember what it was about, because it was like a book report, I think. And I had my speech on index cards, and I just panicked and I dropped all my index cards and I fell apart in front of the class. And it was this traumatic experience. And I remember I don't really remember that much about it, except that of course, I built it up in my own mind to be this terrible experience that I should avoid at all costs for the rest of my life. And at some point, along the way, I overcame that. And then in college, I started as a political science major. I wanted to be, I wanted to study politics and change the world, save the world. At some fell into communication courses. And when I found the public speaking course, I came back to public speaking, was also terrified. I shared in my TEDx talk about how my first speech was a disaster and I fell apart again. This was all these years later. And I really made the decision after that first speech that this was something I needed to conquer, that I could not go on and reach my true potential in life if I didn't really take this on head on and become at least confident about getting up and giving a speech. So that was where the journey really picked up steam. Then I got my bachelor's and my master's degree in communication studies, began teaching public speaking at the university, and then went into consulting and started bringing it to the corporate world. And so, so the journey was very, very long. And I can relate to all of my clients and students who have a paralyzing fear of public speaking, because I share that. I experience that as well. And people don't believe me when they say, now I go out and speak to large audiences and develop training about public speaking. And I took that journey, and I just want to help people to make that journey as well, because I know anyone can do it. Anyone can overcome that and share their message with the world.
I tell you, it's so powerful, Bridget, when you've actually gone through that whole horror that is public speaking,
yes,
not being naturally gifted at it, not thinking you're good at it, and then you actually work at it, overcome it, and it starts working for you. My question for you, I mean, I've also done some college teaching as well. And so my question is, being a college professor versus being a consultant, which do you like better? What's the difference between the two? What's your preference now?
I love them both equally. That's the honest truth. I think my students keep me young. They teach me about, I need to know who the latest rapper is, who's out there. And,
we all need to
really
know that.
Inspire me.
Yeah.
Yes. So, they keep me young. They inspire me to really feel like I'm connected to the up and coming generation and what they're thinking about and how they're seeing the world and what they're bringing to the world. And they're so much more connected on social media and with technology. And they teach me so much. I am so grateful for my students. And I always have interns who are working with me. And so I can help them to launch their careers in the real world, so to speak. And then in the corporate world, I get to see what professionals are doing and how I can help them. They teach me so much about what's happening in the business world, and making sure that I'm up on what organizations are doing around helping people with public speaking and improving communication skills. And so I've gotten to learn so much from my clients about, technology. I've led classes that are global webinars through my clients that I was so terrified to do, and they've all worked out great. So I honestly love them both, and I just love people. I'm such a people person. So the fact that I get to teach 18-year-olds, who are, just starting out and really excited about beginning their professional lives, to, really seasoned senior executives who are working on fine tuning and honing their presentation skills or their leadership skills. I love it all. And I'm so excited about all of it.
Well, we've been enjoying this conversation with Bridget Sampson. Her talk is called How Public Speaking Will Change Your Life. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the mechanics of public speaking over in the Blitz Round. And it's time for the Blitz Round with Bridget Sampson. I'm going to ask Bridget a series of either-or questions related to the preparation and performance of her recent TED Talk. This is going to be great because this is what she does all day long, helping people. Bridget, are you ready?
Yes.
So first question, were you invited to speak or did you apply?
I applied.
All right. I love it when people apply.
I did. I knew some of the folks involved, though, so I really tried to, network and make a strong case for myself.
No, every bit helps. So, that's a couple different strategies. If you have to apply and you don't know anybody and you try to reach out and you still don't know anybody, still apply. And if you know people, take advantage of that network and see if they know anyone that could use a talk like yours. So, I mean, powerful strategies right there. Bridget, are you a memorizer, improviser, or blender?
Blender. I mostly memorized. I mostly wrote it out word for word. But when I was there with the audience and I saw their faces, I definitely adapted in the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what I hear a lot from actors and performing artists is they mostly have it scripted, but they're also able to be in the moment, and then you were able to adapt that a little bit without going off the rails, which we've all seen off the rails, and it's great to stay on the rails with that. So, what's a tip, tool, or technique that helped you?
The tip, tool, or technique that helped me probably was practicing over and over with different people, including a theater professor who I was friends with, who I thought there's nothing he does theater, but he had amazing tips about gesturing and body movement and using the space. So practice with everybody who's willing and take in anything they have to share with you as far as feedback is concerned.
So in terms of the ordering, Bridget, were you an opener? Were you a closer? Were you in between?
I was the opener because my talk was about having confidence around public speaking, and it was a public speaking conference. So I was the opener.
No pressure. What's your advice to openers? What's your advice to other openers? Because that's a huge honor.
Yeah, I think just bring a ton of energy because you set the tone. Really be all in, not over the top, but just bring all your energy and excitement and enthusiasm, full confidence, because you'll set the tone for all the other speakers and for the entire day.
Bridget, what was the most painful part of your talk that you had to cut out?
Oh my gosh, I cut so much out. I probably had a 2-hour talk. I hadn't thought about the answer to that. I had so many stories, and because I work with people on public speaking, I am such a big believer in stories, and I knew I could only do 2 to 3 stories. And I had amazing stories of people I've worked with and life-changing examples and stories of so many of my clients and students. And I really had to determine which I had 2 big stories in the talk, and cutting it down to those was really hard for me.
Yeah, well, and that might be for the next talk, right? That's That's
Yes.
we all have all of these things, and there's no quota, so you can do multiple talks if you want. What was the most unexpected? What was the most unexpected, strange, or just plain weird thing that happened before or during your talk?
Well, it's probably no surprise that I got zero sleep the night before. I was up the entire night, and so my eyes were so swollen. I had these really dark circles and puffy red eyes. I put Visine, makeup. I tried to do everything I could, but there was not that much I could do. So I just went all in and said, "Don't worry about it." And then a week or two after the talk, the curator told me, thing, we had all these cameras on you, but the really close-up camera, for some reason, we lost that footage. So the universe was helping me out, and if you watch the talk, you'll see the video is great and it's high quality, but there are no super close-up shots of me. So
was there a little bit of strategic sabotage there that there maybe another part of you was somehow doing or sending bad energy out to the one camera?
I think I've always felt really connected. Hears me and provides what I need, so it worked for me that day.
Oh, good for you. Well, we've been enjoying this conversation with Bridget Sampson. Her talk is called How Public Speaking Will Change Your Life. You can find out more and watch that talk actually at our website show notes page at bethetalk.com. You can watch that. You can also connect with Bridget on her LinkedIn profile, and we'll also have a Amazon link to her book on the show notes page. And we'll be back with Bridget Sampson in just a moment for the final word of advice. And we're back with Bridget Sampson. It is time for the final word of advice. What is it?
You have a gift to share with the world. This is for every single person. There's a message inside of you. You may know what it is. You may not know what it is. You must share it with the world. There are people waiting for it. And remember that sharing this message is not about you at all. You are the least important person. You are just the messenger to share this message that you were born to share with the world. So go out and do it.
All right, Bridget Sampson, thank you so much for coming on the talk today and sharing your wisdom with Talk Universe.
Thank you, Nathan. It was great fun.
All right, that's a wrap. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Nathan. That was so much fun. I loved it.
Now we'll see if Bill's internet speed. Oh, I see him blinking. This is great. Bill, how are you, man? We still have a lag. I can see him blinking, though. That's a good thing. Okay. Bill, we have a date on Zoom. So I think what we're going to do, I'll meet you at Zoom in just a couple of minutes. I'm going to paste that in there again, and then I will see you on Zoom, and hopefully we will. I'm good, but I acknowledged you about a minute ago. So we're going to go to the Zoom platform.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, but it's still pretty fuzzy. So we're going to go to Zoom. I'm going to post this in, and we're going to sign off. And I'll even email. Actually, I'm going to go to that link right now. And that's what we'll do. You see that? Yeah, it's a long delay. So go to the Zoom link in the chat. I'm already launching in Zoom. We're going to say goodbye to everybody here on Facebook Live, and I'm sure that the Zoom footage will be much faster than what we're getting here on Be Live. So wow, we got 5 out of 5 speakers, including Bill, in the last segment, which we're moving over to the Zoom. Bridget, thank you so much. We got like 8 out of 10. All 10 people showed up today. 2 of them, little tech issues, but we're going to make it up hopefully on Saturday. And now with Bill over on Zoom. So thank you so much, Bridget. Thank you, everybody else. And don't forget, wiggle your finger and share and extend the power on the share on this. So we'll see everybody, and I will see Bill over in Zoom. Take care.